Hey everybody, today we're debating the case for patriarchy, and we are starting right now with the pro side, in particular. Grace, thanks for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Hi, James. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Um, okay, I want to start this by saying that I think there's two different ways to define the word patriarchy. And I think it's really important that we figure out what exactly we're making the case for here. On the one hand, you have the sort of very traditional Oxford Dictionary definition, which is very literal, which would be any form of social organization in which men have predominant power. This comes from the etymology of the word. So patri meaning father and archi meaning rule in Greek. Then you have a more sort of political definition of it, which would be sort of an oppressive structure that men enforce over women, a society controlled by men in which men use their power to their own advantage over women. I would hope just to start that we could agree that the concept that men as a collective have conspired to oppress women throughout history by establishing power structures that subjugate women is ridiculous. It's sort of a conspiracy theory. Pre-Christian societies did see women as second-class citizens, the Greeks, the Romans, etc. The Greeks even thought that women were like unfinished men. But post-Christian societies, I would say generally there isn't a collective of men that are oppressing women. Now, that leads us to two essential questions. Number one, is patriarchy the natural way of organizing human society? And if you agree to that, if so, if it is the natural way, is it possible that we've progressed beyond nature due to technological advances, etc., to the point where we no longer need to use the natural hierarchies? I would say the answer to the first question is obviously yes, but the opposition may try to fight us and say that patriarchy is not the natural way of organizing human society. But in response to that, I would just ask anybody to look at a family and tell me that the father is not the head of the household. Simply look at male and female anatomy, and you tell me that the male is not the dominant and the female is the submissive. Or show me one way in which men are not the source and creativity. They give the source of life, and women take that source and develop it. I think debating about that is just boring. It's in our anatomy. It's in the way we work. It's in the way we think. It's obvious. Now, the thing is, I think about the patriarchy, I think the reason that it pisses the left off so much is because, unfortunately, our society prizes masculine traits like leadership and aggression and dominance as like more valuable than feminine traits like cooperation, religiosity, empathy, humility, stuff like that. So admitting if the left admits that men are natural leaders, they feel like they're admitting that men are better than women because leadership is more prized in our society than, submission, frankly. And I think that's the underlying motivation for saying that, for denying the nature of human, for denying human nature is to say, well, we can't admit that men are natural leaders and that men should be in charge in society, because if we admit that, then we're admitting that women are lesser than men, when in fact that's not true. Women and men both equally have important roles, but I don't think you can debate the nature. I think society has to value women more, and not that society has to masculinize women and say that they can be as great leaders and as great, be in charge of things like men can. I just think it's obvious that men have a certain role and women have a certain role. So if we can agree on the basic natural human fact that men are naturally leaders in society, we can address a second, more interesting question, which would be, have we progressed beyond nature due to technology and other things like that, to the point where we no longer need to use the natural hierarchies? When I was researching this topic, I found a quote by a feminist historian, Dr. Lerner, who said, what Freud should have said is that for women, anatomy once was destiny, but it no longer is, and it should not be in the future. Patriarchy is a human creation. It is not functioning very well now, and it can be ended. We can't do that as long as we believe that patriarchy is natural or God-given. So in that quote, she's kind of saying like, yes, women are naturally, due to our anatomy and also, just due to nature, we are submissive, but due to advancements, we no longer need to use this outdated system. As a Catholic, but more so just as a person, I firmly believe that even if technology can overcome certain physical differences between men and women, that these differences are only the physical manifestations of a deeper separation between the two sexes. Women are contingent on men, and that's just a fact of reality. But I'll leave disproving that to our opposition. I'm not making the case for patriarchy. I'm simply pointing out the obvious, and it's up to them to make the case for something else. There's no coherent way to organize society except for the way that society naturally organizes itself, which is that men are the leaders and women follow. But if you want to play God, you can see how that works out for yourself. Thank you.
We'll kick it over to Infrared for his opening as well.
Sure. So I'd like to begin this by saying that I'm not necessarily committed on any heavy statements on, biology or anything like that. Of course, I think these things play a profound role, but I think it's even more simple when it comes to the topic of patriarchy. And what I'd say is I don't think the following statement can be contested, is that patriarchy is the foundation of civilization. Now, I'll preface this. Before the advent or era of civilization, it appears that mankind lived in these kind of small communities, these bands of so-called hunter-gatherers, in which it appeared there was a matriarch. But civilization is more or less defined by the ability for different groups, different social communities, to be able to somehow coexist in a state of mutual recognition and in a state of submission towards some kind of higher power than even that. And if we look across history, every era of history, of this history of civilization, corresponds to some kind of patriarchy. Now, we can speculate on the reasons for this. I think one of them has to do with the relationship between manhood or masculinity and socialization. It seems that the dream of a matriarchy, or the dream of a so-called equality, we know it's impossible, absolute equality, is this idea of unconditional sociality, of everyone being fully absorbed into some kind of socialization. The more effeminate a man is, the more he's socialized and willing to obey the rules and norms of institutions and discourses. Manhood, if you want to simplify it, can be defined by being able to step out of the mold, step out of the box, and step out of a given social community and found a new one. And this is principally done through the unit of the family. Whatever arrangement or form the family has in the era of civilization has a man at the head of the household for a reason, because the family is the form in which man establishes a new realm of social community that, while of course can coexist with other forms of community like countries, nations, or states, is not purely continuous with them. So to me, it seems clear that the agenda against masculinity and against the so-called patriarchy is founded upon this attempt to fully socialize society and eliminate the revolutionary impulses inherent in masculinity. Men do not want to obey some kind of uniform, institutionalized, straitjacketed, safe space society. They have an inherent inclination to look at society from the perspective of outside. Not to be a vulgar evolutionary psychologist, but it's almost as simple as men had to deal with the issue of, it doesn't matter what meaning it has socially, it doesn't matter whose feelings this hurts, a lion is going to come fucking eat us unless we grab a spear and go get rid of the lion. Whereas women are more focused on the inner world of community and sociality. And men have to deal with the fact that every social community is premised by its contrary, by its opposite. Every social community is premised by conditions that are not within the control of the social community. You cannot discursively arbitrate the existence of lions, volcanoes, hurricanes, droughts, famines, so on and so forth, or even external threats in the form of invading enemies. These are not things you can negotiate within a given community. female psychology, it appears to me, and I'm open to being proven wrong, but I haven't in the entirety of my 26 years, is more based on this kind of assumption that the entire world coexists with the way in which we talk about it, describe it, or communicate it with one another. And the ability to understand a pure objective alterity seems to not be possible for women, in my view. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does speak to the fact there are differences between men and women as it relates to how communities are reproduced. They fulfill different roles, not just different roles at the level of a household, but different roles at the level of civilization. And instead of trying, I am not necessarily against formal equality between men and women. We should not say women can't be engineers or scientists and so on and pursue this form of education, because then we preempt something we can have no absolute knowledge of. But even when we have full, absolute formal equality, which appears to be the case in the United States, it seems like we still end up fulfilling more or less natural sexual roles. And feminists consider this to be an outrage and want to go beyond the realm of formal equality and establish some kind of absolute equality in the realm of culture. And this is exactly what I oppose. Culture is patriarchal, not because it's some system or it's some kind of political establishment, but because the male and female role ontologically mean different things. The male and female role are not arbitrary gender constructs, because this assumes some kind of flat, neutral biological state, when in reality, all biology is sexed in some kind of way, even in terms of asexual reproduction. All biology revolves around the contradiction of sexuation. And this is an irreducible, absolute contradiction. No matter how much you want to say we can bridge the gap, there's always going to be the male way and the female way of looking at things. And I don't think this dialectic can be dissolved. It may reproduce itself in new ways, but that dialectic between man and woman, that fundamental difference, has always existed across all of history. And here's the most important kicker. The recent movements which attempt to establish artificially some kind of equality between man and woman only ever have the effect of making men effeminate. It never has the effect of actually allowing women to somehow fulfill the patriarchal or masculine role. All it does is basically try to turn everyone into a bitch, excuse my language. So that's the effect we've seen. So when people say, Haas, you may say this is the case for all of history, but what about these new things that are happening now? Those are not succeeding in eliminating sexual difference. They are just succeeding in an extremely misanthropic, anti-human way, attacking masculinity and manhood itself, which is contributing to the decline of civilization itself and a healthy relationship between the sexes. So that's my...
Thank you very much for that opening statement as well, Infrared. And folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, James. Want to let you know our vision at Modern Day Debate is to provide a neutral platform so that everybody can make their case on a level playing field. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, because we hope you feel welcome, and we've got plenty more debates to see. You don't want to miss out, so hit that subscribe button right now. With that, we're going to jump over to the, you could say, against patriarchy position. Thanks so much for being with us, Neeina and Anthony. Anthony, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, James. Appreciate you inviting me onto this program. Glad to be here. So tonight we are arguing whether or not patriarchy should be followed. My opponents have just said that we should, and I will do my best to explain why we shouldn't. This is an argument that has been going on for all of recorded history, and pretty much nearly across all cultures. The ancient Stoic philosophers argued that the women should study philosophy, but in order to be better wives and mothers. It was left to men to lead. In ancient China, Confucius, the founder of Confucianism, talked about the proper role for men and women. He promoted traditional values as a means of achieving stability, and that meant men should be leaders and women should be homemakers. We see the same thing in India going back to at least 1500 BC, where women were outright prevented from entering religious life. And I'm sure we all know how Judeo-Christian values have influenced the West. Now, while all this is true, it is also true that the opposite arguments were being made as well. Going back to ancient Greece, we have the ancient myth of Amazonian warriors being fearsome and battle-hardened. Plato and Socrates argued that women and men were roughly equal. In China, we have the story of Mulan and the Pillow Book. The warrior Queen Maviva existed. Medicine women in the Dark Ages of Europe were generally respected by their communities before the takeover of Christendom. Joan of Arc, need I say more? Regardless of what anyone says, there has never been consensus on this issue. If one believes that patriarchy does exist, which I do, it doesn't mean that the existence is just. Just because it may have served a purpose in the past doesn't mean it does so now. For example, we can easily postulate that patriarchy rose out of physical power differences between men and women, war, farming, a desire to control parentage, or any other manner of convenience and rationalization. But the material conditions that gave rise to the patriarchy are no longer in existence, if they ever were. With each passing century, humans have pushed towards greater equality and liberalization for our collective betterment. We have gone from a paternalistic, authoritarian-based system to one of roughly liberal democracy. And if you are like me, you believe that is an inherent good. But let's say you aren't like me, and that you think the decline since women were given the franchise in the 19th Amendment has been bad. Since its passage, though, the United States GDP has increased exponentially, going from roughly $59 billion to $25 trillion in today's money. Maybe you're okay with women having the right to vote, but you think society only really started going downhill when women entered the workforce. Well, since about 1960, GDP per capita went from roughly $3,000 to $70,000, and US GDP has gone from roughly $534 billion to, again, $25 trillion. If women being empowered was really that detrimental to society, you would think you would see it in these numbers, wouldn't you? What about laws? Well, I can think of no better example than Frances Perkins, who was instrumental in the creation of the Fair Labor Standards and Social Security. I think most people can agree that society should strive to get as close to a meritocracy as possible. I believe most people would say that not every person is suited for every type of position. I would venture to guess that my opponents agree with these statements as well. In fact, they likely believe that men and women are generally suited for different roles, as you heard. And that is, well, okay, of course. But I'm really selfish. For the sake of argument, let's assume that my opponents are right about the patriarchy. What does this do to people who do not fit neatly into these tiny little boxes? Are they to be ostracized by society? Are they to be forced themselves into these boxes which they do not really belong? If so, then would that mean that we lose out on their talents? Doesn't all of society suffer as a result? Like I said, I am an extremely selfish person. I want to be able to have access to all of the world's talents. I want to be able to live my life as I choose, as long as I don't hurt other people. Forcing everyone into these confining roles prevents this, and as a result, it does hurt us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Neeina as well. Thanks for being with us, Neeina, for the first time ever. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's always exciting to come on a new show. I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because I can't imagine the attention span is going to hold that much. But I want to just address a few things that were obviously mentioned earlier about like the natural way. I don't think that there is a natural way. If you're going to use the phrasing of saying like a natural way, then we wouldn't have differences in societies, right? There's more than I want to get into later, obviously, but I'll just be very short here and just say I'm an American. I love freedom, and I want freedom for the most amount of people. What I think people forget when it comes to patriarchy is it doesn't just like shit on women. It is very damaging to men as well. I don't think that men should be required to be this like strong, domineering, I'm Ned Stark, emotional person or emotionless person if you're not that type of person, because people are different and we all know that. I think that it shouldn't be a requirement to just be like the tallest guy, the strongest guy, like we have to be the best leaders. No, I think it's okay to be somebody who is more I don't know, more shy, more even like I guess like feminine, like more in tune with their feelings. They don't have to put on this presentation and play this role. Another aspect of the patriarchy is the core is to basically oppress both men and women, in my opinion, because it limits their freedoms. Because you're not able to like stay a house husband in the way that I think should be the option to you. I think it puts an incredible amount of societal systematic pressure to maintain rigid gender expectation, and to also add or to agree again with my partner here that it definitely weakens the pool of talent that is available to contribute to society. I think diversity, again, as an American, diversity is our strength. Why do you think we're the best country in the fucking world when it comes to freedom? Because I think that as an American, everyone should be against the patriarchy because that is undemocratic, that is anti-freedom, and I think that we have no need for it. It doesn't make sense. We are the strongest country in the world. Why would we go back to some archaic value that clearly has not worked out? Do you think that the patriarchal countries that exist in the modern day are doing like significantly well? I'm going to end on that.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well. We're going to jump into the open dialogue. Want to let you know, folks, a couple of housekeeping things. First, if you didn't know, Modern Day Debate is also available via podcast. All of our debates end up on the podcast within 24 hours of them being live. Pull up your favorite podcast app right now and find Modern Day Debate on your favorite podcast app so you can listen to debates on the go ad-free. With that, we're going to jump into the open dialogue. Thanks so much for being with us, Neeina, Anthony, Grace, and even Infrared. Actually, I gotta tell you, Infrared saved the day by coming in early, so I want to give him some major street cred. Thank you, Infrared, and the rest of our guests. The floor is all yours.
So I'm just curious, are there any examples of some non-patriarchal countries you can name?
Some non-patriarchal countries?
I don't understand the relevancy of that question.
Yeah, because you weren't paying attention and your head was up your ass. Because Neeina was just saying that, well, what about all the patriarchal countries? How are they doing? Well, what are some non-patriarchal countries?
Well, I think that you could compare a patriarchal country, for example, like, I don't know, like Saudi Arabia to America. I mean, like, those are obviously two different levels of patriarchy.
Hold on. It's the GDP per capita in Saudi Arabia probably
I'm just giving you an example of a country that is more patriarchal.
Sure. But Neeina, you're equating patriarchy with oppression of women, right? Because aren't you equating that?
I'm equating it to oppression of both men and women.
Okay, but what I'm saying is you're saying that patriarchy limits people's freedom. All I'm saying is it's a way to organize society. And America is
by forcing them to force them into going into it has patriarchal systems. Yes, of course, every country does to an extent. There's no way to necessarily get away from it.
Why is that?
I'm not saying,
why is it that every country?
It's not a system of government. Like, what do you mean?
Right, it's a hierarchy. It's a way of organizing.
Here's a less loaded question.
Right, exactly.
Neeina, can you name some non-patriarchal societies or cultures?
Do you want me to name a society or culture that doesn't have hierarchies?
That doesn't have patriarchy as you'd see it.
I don't have any
like a matriarchal society. That's successful.
I have no fucking a non-patriarchal doesn't mean a matriarchal society.
I thought that the question was whether or not we should follow a patriarchal society, not whether or not they exist. Hold on.
The question of
whether or not they exist.
The question of whether we should have a patriarchy is directly related to the question of whether it's possible for there not to be patriarchy.
Is it okay? So then my follow-up question, and Infrared, would be whether or not is there going to be an instance where there is either meritocracy, where patriarchy doesn't really matter anymore, or is there some societies that are less patriarchal than other ones, and those societies are doing better or not?
I love your question. In a meritocracy, I'm willing to bet a patriarchy would arise naturally. We don't have a meritocracy in today's feminist institutions because
I would argue there isn't a meritocracy even in some of the most
Hold on. What we
countries
have in the woke institutions is affirmative action for the fairer sex.
Okay, wait. But I gotta put some stats here.
We have a quota. If you're a woman, we're going to appoint you to a position of power, not because they're married.
What quota? What country are you talking about, though? We don't actually have quotas.
In the United States.
Yeah, I've never heard of.
We don't have quotas in the United States.
We have institutions which definitely do.
There are some companies that wish to have
there's not some companies. It's a corporate fucking standard. Don't weasel out here.
I'm not weaseling out. There are some companies that want to have a more equity.
Name some major institutions that don't practice affirmative action for women when it comes to
affirmative action for women.
Yeah, name some.
Can you name one that does?
Every corporate, almost.
That's a cop out.
Okay, that's not.
Okay. You know what?
Wait. So which one?
Almost all of the writers who work at Netflix who are women are just there because they're women. They're not talented. They're worthless. Everything they produce.
That is a completely subjective interpretation of what is going on.
It's not subjective. If you don't know, these corporations literally go, "Oh yeah, she's a woman. We'll hire her because it gives us some fucking brownie points." Yeah, that's what
capitalism sucks.
Okay, but wait. Don't we have to agree?
And that's the case.
we have to. I think you guys on the opposition, you have to give some basis for why you say patriarchy is oppressive to women, because you're saying it's wrong, and we're going into what societies have patriarchy, matriarchy, whatever. But what is your? Yeah, go ahead.
So we're changing the subject.
Well, I mean, quotas, but don't we have to go back to the basics and say, why are you guys against patriarchy in the first place? And then we can go into how it's...
Sure.
Do you want to go first, Neeina?
Well, I mean, that was literally our opening statements, so yeah. I don't know if you guys weren't paying attention, but, do you want to just read them again?
Well, but what I'm saying is you're saying the patriarchy hurts women, but you haven't actually identified...
Hurts everybody. The reason it hurts everybody, and that's what I ended my opening statement with, is that there are people.
But what is that based?
What is that based on? Crowdsourced.
Hold on.
Let's give. All right, hold on one sec. Just because we have each of you asking. Hold on one sec. We have each of you asking a question of Anthony. I want to give Anthony a chance to respond.
Thank you. So to answer that question, it is oppressive to anybody that is not within the quote unquote norm. And there are going to be men that are going to be outside of the norm. There are going to be women outside of the norm. What we want to see happen is as equitable of a society as that we can have. And to me, that means meritocracy, which means that if a woman is good at leading people, they should be a leader. If a man is good at being a leader, they should be a leader. If a woman is smarter than a man in a particular field of study, they should have more say in what that field of study is rather than a man does, just for the fact that they are a man.
I agree with that too, but I'm not saying. I think you equate patriarchy with 50s, which is this.
Then
ridiculous
you don't agree.
Cookie cutter.
Wait. You can't. No, hold on. You can't agree with that and then be for the patriarchy.
Now it's my turn.
Patriarchy in the sense that men are generally the leaders, but not every man is going to be a better leader than a woman.
But that's not what patriarchy.
But naturally, men are the leaders.
You haven't disproven that. Hold on one sec. Let's hear from Neeina, and then let's hear from Infrared. And then Anthony.
I would respond directly to her, so I don't know if we want to get into that. But you're saying men are naturally leaders based off of what?
Well, a meritocracy is a patriarchy essentially, because men will be good at leading, aggression, dominance, and women will be good at taking care of the house and being more submissive. And there will be outliers, but essentially it will form itself into a patriarchy. If it's a meritocracy,
why did women not want to do that anymore, and why have we moved past?
You can. I know this is a Jordan Peterson point, but you can look at Scandinavian countries. You can look at Scandinavian countries when women have all the freedom to choose. They choose feminine jobs like nursing, teaching young children, etc. Right?
But
so that does naturally form itself into a patriarchy. Men are making the decisions. They're the leaders. They're in politics. They themselves.
Wait, so how is being a nurse if you're the head nurse, you're doing a leadership job? You seem like
yes on a lower
higher level. Version of that.
How is that a lower level?
How is it a lower level?
It's lower than a doctor or a surgeon.
Is it?
Based off of what?
A nurse is equal to a doctor or surgeon.
It depends on the level of nursing.
You need much more
leadership.
If we're talking about a nurse practitioner, they are basically the equivalent of a general practitioner.
So am I not in this debate anymore?
Let's welcome Infrared in for his point.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you're gonna save her, huh?
First of all, let's stop pretending that men are happy with the new feminism and shit.
No one's happy right now.
Shut the fuck up. Men in 2023 are way more miserable and depressed than they were in the 1950s. You're gonna sit here and deny that you're a dishonest weasel and a coward and a liar. Now, the second thing I want to say,
people are more depressed than they were after World War II, where they had all that
Let's give
trauma.
Infrared about 30 seconds to make a few points, and then I promise I'll give you the same amount of time.
Why the fuck is anyone gonna sit here and pretend like like what we have with this equity policy reflects meritocracy? If we had a meritocracy, there would be zero women in positions of corporate power compared to what we have today. If you're going to deny that, you're full of shit. These women running universities, corporations, institutions, academies, even the damn police are doing the equity shit, saying we need female cops to go fucking fight big dudes and shit. What the hell is that? Why are they you believe in sending female cops out to go and wrangle like strong grown-ass men? That's stupid. And then you complain about police killing people. Well, what else do they have but a fucking gun? It's stupid. Every segment of society in America, every sector of society in America is doing this shit. We're like, oh, we got to have women just because they're fucking women. Why? Why don't we actually have a real meritocracy where people who have the skills get the fucking job? That's not what we fucking have. That's why a man, that's why Infrared Hayes, I'm not going to get nominated as the VP of the Democrat Party. We got to have Kamala Harris because she's a woman. Kamala did dog shit in the fucking
let's
primaries.
kick it over.
And they still
giving you a good 30
we're doing the thing where you just talk over me.
Hey,
I can talk over you the same way that you talk over me. It's fine. What the fuck are you talking about? Do you have any proof for a single fucking claim that you're making?
Excuse me?
Do you have any proof of anything that you're saying? You just kind of
for example, you're saying. Hold on. So let me have a question, direct question. So you said that of course, police are killing people. Look at all the women on the police force. How many women killed people in 2020 or 20? We'll say 2022. That's the last year.
Look, you're missing the fucking point. That was
you can't make that point.
Women
Listen, crowdsource. The point is, we have irrational cases of affirmative action where women are put on the line of duty to go and fucking fight big ass criminals.
And how many of those women have pulled their service piece out to blow somebody away versus how many men?
I have no idea, but I'm telling. Okay.
The point is that the vast majority of shootings that happen. If we're going to talk about what
not relevant.
It is though.
Irrelevant.
Just so we can actually have a conversation.
Okay, let me ask you a common sense question.
We do actually have to have a chance where people are able to interact with each other's questions.
This is common sense. Ready? Can a woman, female officer restrain a grown, big-ass, strong man? Can they do that?
No.
So how do they enforce authority?
Strong man.
How do they enforce authority?
Yes, women are much more violent. Women are much more violent.
This has nothing to do with the patriarchy. This is a single job role.
No, it does have to do with the patriarchy because that's an
okay.
example.
Then I want to hear Grace tell me how it has to do with the patriarchy.
Just because I do have to put everybody on mute for a second, just because I appreciate everybody's passion, but if everybody's speaking at the same time, especially if sometimes people are even speaking over their debate partner, it really defeats the purpose of people being able to hear anybody at all. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and I'm ready for you. So I think the last question was posed by, Anthony. So if you can remind us just by literally only asking that question, we'll give Infrared 30 seconds to respond to that question. What was your question one more time, Anthony?
I would like to know why women's existence in the police force has anything at all to do with the patriarchy.
I'm just saying it's an example of how even police departments are starting to adopt the equity policy, appointing women in positions they're clearly not fit for.
But this has nothing, in my opinion, to do with the patriarchy. Patriarchy is a societal system where men are, by either quote unquote natural virtue of their biology, are more likely to be in charge of society versus women. Not more likely, are in charge of society versus women.
How do you get rid of the patriarchy then if it's just an immutable fact?
I don't believe it's an immutable fact. So that's what I made in my opening statement.
Well, can I try to answer your question?
Biology, what do we do?
Female police officers, okay, the patriarchy, okay, so men are more powerful naturally, right? So female police officers are trying to invert that nature, and that's happened a lot in our society with women. What the problem is our society values masculine traits. So feminists want women to become police officers, lawyers, politicians, be aggressive, assertive, dominant, forceful, right? The problem is that our society values those traits, which do naturally lead to men being in power. But it doesn't mean that men are any better than women. But women now feel the need to constantly prove that they're as good as men, which actually ends up masculinizing women. The patriarchy is just a recognition of the natural order of things and is much more beneficial to women, because if a female is in the police force, she's going to do poorly. She has less gravitas. She's going to be more violent because she doesn't have the physical power to restrain people and control a situation. And it actually is much worse for women.
Okay, so I just looked up the stats. There's 11.5%.
Oh God, I don't want to do data. Can we just argue the concepts?
But the point is we're going to talk about how this existence of the police, women being in police force, are going to be more violent and therefore more masculinized as somehow being bad. Then we have to look at how many people.
They're more violent to make up for the fact that they physically cannot control a situation as nearly as well as men can.
But if that was the case, then it wouldn't be men overwhelmingly using their service arm to kill people in the line of duty.
Well, it's men overwhelmingly because there's way more men in the police force. There's way more men.
Even proportionally, it is more men proportionally killing people in the line of duty than women. And that is probably because the way that the police are trained to be fearful for their lives, because America's got a gun. I'll just stop it there because I don't want to do that.
So let's simplify this. I'm not here to deny that men are more violent than women. Obviously they are. But here's the question we have to fucking ask, all right? Just so we can level somewhere in terms of like where our level of common sense is, or do we have to pull out data? Do you agree there is a widespread phenomena of feministic equity policy across America's institutions where women are appointed into positions of power or the professions because they want to look good hiring more women or having more women? Like, is that an institutional policy that's been adopted by pretty much most of America's corporations, universities, NGOs, and stuff? Like, if you have a basic mainstream institution in the United States, do they consider it a good thing to like hire women and put them in positions primarily because they're women and they think this is a win for equality? So just so we can level.
Not primarily because they are women. But no, because you're going to laugh, I know. It is not just because they're women. What it is that they are women with certain leadership qualities, and so those are the people that are being promoted. It's not just any old woman that's being pulled off the street and then be like, okay, you're CEO now. That's not what's happening.
So you're
experience and everything else.
Hold on. You're saying women are primarily being promoted career-wise and in terms of their professions and positions of power, not because of affirmative action, but because of pure merit. That's what you're saying.
I'm going to push back on Haz a little bit here because I think he has a sort of like a 50s cookie cutter idea of male and feminine female traits. Women can be extremely good communicators. They can be great for business, like connecting with people, networking. So it's not like all, and women can also be good leaders. I'm just saying like naturally.
Like Kamala Harris, who was appointed.
Kamala Harris is an extremely effective politician. Sure, is she full of shit? Yes.
All right, we can have you guys debate about. Hold on, you guys. Hold on. So we can have you guys debate about Kamala Harris later. I do want to give Neeina a chance. If you had any thoughts that you wanted to share, Neeina, I know that the conversation's been moving fast, and oftentimes it feels like you'd have to interrupt between a series of questions between two people. What have you got, Neeina? Any thoughts?
You're muted on here on Zoom.
Well, let me unmute you. I think it might be set because Infrared's on tonight. I set it so that I have to unmute you.
So I just hit unmute. I guess I didn't realize I was muted. I have the thing.
Go ahead.
I wasn't looking. How long have I been muted for? No wonder nobody's listening to me. Sorry. So I know we don't want to do the stats thing apparently, but I will say, Oz, what do you think about the fact that diverse teams are statistically more likely to be have higher production, to be more efficient?
What industry?
In research, specifically. The stat that I have.
In researching what? Researching what? What are you talking about?
Well, if you're talking about, I have a study of 6.6 million papers, finds that gender balanced teams produce more innovative and impactful work. So
what are you talking about? What work?
do you understand how researching works?
Researching what?
It's research in general. It's a generalized
research in
research.
general.
So you're going to sit here and tell me
It's data science.
You found a legitimate study that said
Well,
all research
yes.
is better when there's diversity.
Well, it was a study of 6.6 million papers. It's a meta study.
How did they measure the innovation success of those papers?
You want me to just I could just link it to you if you want.
I'm just curious, what the hell you're talking about, because if you know anything.
Well, I'm telling you. Okay, so you're just going to attack the study now.
Well, the problem is if you know anything about the scientific community, this is the reason I'm asking this, and if you know anything about academia, most research papers lead to nothing. So I'm asking you, what defines success?
Okay, I'm talking about that they're more likely to be published.
Okay, I don't think that's a metric.
14%.
I don't
more likely to be highly. You understand what highly cited papers mean?
I think papers that are more.
Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I do, but I think papers that are more likely to actually lead to technological innovation or new practices, for example, that are actually.
One paper is just going to lead to technological innovation. No, it's research. The thing is, it's just
research is supposed to produce results. All right, if it's based on results, then I'd have to look into it. But if it's not based on results, I'm not going to entertain what you're talking about. I don't care about.
Well, assume that it's true though, just for the sake of argument.
Yeah, I mean, I can link it too.
Yeah, if it happens to be true, then my best guess would be that it would have been the result of a meritocracy and not an equity policy of just hiring women to overcome systemic oppression or whatever.
Okay, so then you would agree then that diverse teams are better.
If it was proven that diverse teams produce more results, of course. But first of all, that has not been proven. And
according to this paper, it is.
Second of all, you guys are being really bad faith, because nobody's even denying that. Nobody's denying that women can research scientific papers and stuff. What I am insisting upon the fact of is that our society, in terms of our institutions, has tipped the scale in the extreme toward equity policy and affirmative action rather than merit. And I think if you deny that, you're just being disingenuous.
Okay, we're talking about patriarchy, though. So patriarchy would deny these women being able to be involved in these studies. So they would be, 9%.
That's not true. That's not true.
Less public.
Patriarchy is a meritocracy.
No.
Men are inherently better at those things.
I do want to hear. Let's let Neeina finish this point, and then we'll hear from you, Grace.
I don't know if you just don't understand what it is, but if we're talking about that gender roles should be patriarchy inherently supports gender roles, correct? Can we establish that?
It recognizes gender roles that already exist that are obvious.
That are obvious. Okay.
You have to define which kind of patriarchy are you referring to? Are you referring to the feminist theory that there's a conspiracy that men have conspired to subjugate women?
Thinks that. That's ridiculous. Nobody. Okay, I don't know where the fuck you got that from, but nobody thinks that. So let's put that out.
Well, who is according to you, who is enforcing the patriarchy and wants to subjugate both men and women? Who is it?
Both men and women do it. It's just
so if it hurts both men and women, then who's doing it? You must have somebody.
It is a self-perpetuating cycle based on prior existence that is similar to the way that lefties, I'm sure Haas can agree with this, lefties believe that capitalism self-perpetuates itself.
Okay, but the prior existence must come from somewhere. It must have originated somewhere. I believe it originates in the nature of human society.
It originates in the fact that we created farming, and farming created the material conditions that led to the need to. This is not jibber jabbing.
There must be somebody to blame for this.
You gotta let me finish.
System.
Hold on.
Go ahead and finish.
Go ahead, Anthony.
So, if there is a feminist theory that says that patriarchy came into existence because of farming, and the reason that it became into existence because of farming is because when you are staying stable in a single area for long periods of time, you have to have a system where you divide the labor of the farm and as well as protecting the area. So but that
doesn't make sense because farming is less masculine than hunter gathering, which I assume you would say was before that. That
is a entirely modern interpretation of what it is.
Hunter-gathering is an even more extreme enforcement of gender roles. If you want to say that somebody's enforcing something, that men go out and hunt and that women stay home and prepare the food and take care of the kids, that's...
They didn't...
Dude, we're not
farming
even...
Farming is much more egalitarian. But you have to blame somebody for this oppressive system. You have to blame somebody. Who's to blame?
Gotcha.
It has to be
inevitable.
All right, we got you.
I blame Haas. Fuck it.
Really quick, let's hear an actual answer from either Neeina or Anthony, and then we'll go over to Infrared.
How can both sexes be oppressing each other?
It's the
because
system
you're
that's doing it.
perpetuating. Yeah.
Who started it?
Who started capitalism?
I don't know. I'm not here to debate capitalism. I don't know politics, really.
No, but it's a system. Who started that? Is it an individual? What are you asking for?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a system of it's an economic system that developed. I don't know.
It's a system, and that people have been living under for years. Hundreds of years.
But you have to. If you say capitalism is oppressive, you must say that somebody started it to oppress others, right?
You want me to? Okay. I think you just don't even understand what we're talking about. Who started it then?
You can't just turn it back on me. I'm saying the patriarchy. You're saying is oppressive to both. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Bridge you got. So Grace is saying that the reason the patriarchy exists is an inherent biological function of humans in general. Men are stronger than women. Men are more naturally leading to people. Whatever. Right. Whereas people that have taken more a sociological view of this, which I think Neeina will do, is saying that what we actually have is that at some point in human history, we don't have all of human history recorded, so we can only theorize based on anthropological findings and piecing together whatever written texts or oral histories exist. That what we see is that somebody at some point decided that usually a leader, usually a group of leaders, decided, hey, this is the best way to go forward for some reason. And that is where I came with the farming thing. That's where I come with the war stuff. You have territory, you have to do this, all that stuff.
Crowdsourced, did a man or a woman invent feminism?
That's not relevant, so I'm not going to answer it.
Well, you're talking about like a bunch of stupid bullshit about farming, so I just hope we rope it back to the actual topic.
But Grace asked who started patriarchy. So I decided to answer that question. So there we go.
Okay, well, it was a relevant detour. And I have to ask a question. You keep talking about patriarchy versus meritocracy. Well, What would you say to the feminist critique, which is dominant and widespread in terms of how patriarchy is framed, which is this: even in a meritocracy, if we don't go out of our way to quote unquote correct thousands of years of imbalance culturally, on a cultural level, we're talking about culture, then it's still...
Well, I just disagree. I would disagree with those people.
Okay,
at some point you have to ignore thousands of years ago. I don't care what happened 1,000 years ago. I don't care what happens like 10 years ago.
What examples of a meritocracy could you give them that are not patriarchal?
Well, we don't have a meritocracy right now. Partly because of meritocracy. I mean, partially because of patriarchy, partly because of any other stuff.
Let's say we had a meritocracy, and on a cultural level, it still led to something that most people could agree resembled a patriarchy.
It would no longer be inherently. It would no longer be a patriarchy because it would be meritocratic.
Yeah, those things don't exist. Those things are completely unable to exist in the same world.
I want to just get something out of this.
Okay, well, am I speaking too much?
Because I'm really curious.
Honest?
Because there is no formal patriarchy, right? So if you're saying it would no longer be really a patriarchy anymore, why is that? And I want you to answer that.
Okay, just to make sure I understood your question correctly, if there was meritocracy where men were still relatively in charge compared to women, that would, in your mind, be a patriarchy.
No, I'm asking you, why wouldn't that be a patriarchy?
Yeah, no, I'm making sure that I understand your position as well as the question. Yeah. So that wouldn't be a patriarchy in my mind, because what we would get rid of every single kind of system that is sociologically constructed at some level, and then that oppresses people, and then we would have meritocracy.
What oppresses women?
Grace, let the man handle this.
I do 1 second.
Come on.
I do. Hold on. Well, going back. Hold on 1 second. All right, you guys. Seriously, there's one thing that just triggers me.
I don't call.
Okay, don't worry. Now I'm getting pleasure out of it. So I'm just going to mute everybody for a second. So what I'm going to do is kick it back to Neeina, because Neeina, I think, had a point earlier, and Infrared wanted to finish his point first. So, Neeina, what have you got?
I do not remember exactly what we're talking about, but I did want to make a joke of, I think Grace, if she wants to live in the patriarchy, should probably just stop talking.
No, you misunderstand what a patriarchy is.
All right. So what
I
I'm
know what
trying
it
to
is, okay.
say is that these systems, these sociological systems, is the word you use that you're talking about, are cultural phenomena. They are not enumerated institutions that exist on a formal level inscribed somewhere.
It depends on the country,
Right.
and
but
depends
in
on the
United-
institution.
Okay. In the United States of America, I think it's pretty fair to say that at the level of the law and most of the institutions which rule society, there is not much of an enforcement of male dominance.
Yeah, no.
There's a disagreement there.
You said formal?
Yes, formal.
Okay, I can kind of agree with that.
So if it's informal, then how do you determine whether it's an organic cultural phenomena or if it's the nefarious so-called institution of patriarchy, which you seem not to be able to pin down?
You look at the this is going to be flubbed, I'm sure, but you look at the amount of people that are applying for positions and who are getting those positions. You look at the people you look at how many more applications with similar or even the exact same resume are going through it and seeing which ones are hired more than the others, et cetera, to get to the heart of it. I mean, this is just basic sociological.
So you would say that this
study.
would be purely measured in the form of past institutional credentials, but that speaks to a problem I speak to earlier, which is it's self-referential. If the only credentials, I'll give you an example of this. Sometimes people are hired not necessarily because of the credentials they had in the past, but because of the unique and creative ability for them to solve problems and engage in task solving problems and so on. So maybe women can, in some cases, have more credentials on a piece of paper than a man, but a man is actually more effective at getting things done. And that can't always be measured by institutions necessarily.
Well, then why would those men then be hired because they're better at creating stuff? If you can't measure it, then how do you know that the men are better?
It can't always be measured by a resume. It could be measured in the results, obviously, but it can't always be measured.
Well, when I say resume, I mean like someone's past job, someone's a test, whatever. It just the amalgamation of everything that goes into getting hired.
Yeah, but I think institutions are inherently socializing things, which is basically they kind of neglect that element of human creativity and individual willpower that cannot always be premised by the terms of the institution. And I think that's why in a meritocracy, sometimes men do naturally come out on top and dominate, even if it doesn't make sense according to the resume or the institution, because of.
But you would have to prove. Sorry, go, finish your point. I don't mean to talk over you.
Well, I'm just trying to give you one possible example of how what you would take as a measurement of unjust patriarchy could actually just reflect something organic.
Yes, right. Men prefer to hire other men because they're less likely to get pregnant. They're more work focused. They work longer hours. Is that part of the patriarchy? Are those men part of the men who hire?
I mean,
other
if they prefer to hire men over women simply because of the fact that the woman could possibly get pregnant, yeah, I would say that is not.
Well, if you're trying to run an effective business, you have to recognize the natural occurrences.
Yeah,
which is
and
that
men
if you hire
need to
a woman,
spend time, but men need to spend time with their kids as well during paternity leave, and that's an issue that men are actually oppressed by the patriarchy because they're expected to just be like, hey, you are not supposed to be with your kid during the first 8 months of its life. Fuck you, come back to work.
It's much more important. It's much more important for the woman to be with the kid. In the first couple months of when a baby's born, the man doesn't really do much of anything. It's mostly the baby and the mother.
Oh my God,
that depends on the ability.
It's
of
true. It's called
produce.
nature.
It's true that they don't do anything.
They don't have much to do. They interact with the baby somewhat, but they can work just as hard.
So it's not important for you to be near your child and help
be near your child.
You don't need to take time off of work. It's infinitely, exponentially more important for the woman to bond with the child.
One at a time. One at a time.
Just so we're clear.
All right, let's hear from Neeina. Go ahead, Neeina.
Okay, so you think that men don't need to spend time with their children?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
I said they need to spend much less time. They don't need to take time off of work if they have a newborn. A couple hours a day is fine. They don't have much to do. It's a newborn. It can't talk. It can't.
Okay, so you want just somebody to stay at home and just. So the second she gives birth, she should just be able to take care of everything.
Okay,
It's incredibly important in the early stages of a baby for the woman
You
to bond
understand
with
that
it,
like
most
bonding
of the
in
time.
terms of like actually like you're with your partner.
What's a guy gonna
is
do? What's a guy gonna do?
incredibly
Hold
important
the
that you're
baby? He's gonna hold the baby a little bit.
Do you
say hi
understand
to
how
it.
babies work? What the fuck are you talking about?
What's a man gonna do? It's about the woman. She's breastfeeding.
Wait.
She's.
So you're
So
saying
you
all
can just
women-
leave
one-
a baby in a corner and don't do anything?
Not all women
You're
can
liars.
breast.
You're
not
just denying
all,
reality.
No. Not all women are
I'm
capable
trying
of
to ask you to
breastfeeding.
clarify, my
only a
girl.
small minority of women
No,
can.
you
Hold on, let's
straw
hear
manned
from
me by
Anthony.
saying something I didn't say.
I'm
Let's hear
asking
from
you a
Anthony.
question. I'm wanting you to correct
No,
me.
quiet. I want to hear from Anthony. I gave you guys a shot. You guys talked. Now, I'm amazed that you make that face at me, Neeina, when I'm trying to interject just to give Anthony a chance to speak, and you make it seem like I'm the bad guy because I'm just saying, like, I've
was
said
just the
several
phrasing
times,
you
hold on,
used.
seriously, I'm still talking and you're still interrupting.
My bad.
Is that when I'm saying, let's go to Anthony, several times
Yeah.
and you're still talking over me, and you still just keep doing it, it's like, okay, I don't think you realize I'm the one that's supposed to keep this thing orderly. So,
He's the patriarch.
Sorry, you're a little quiet when everyone's talking, so I apologize. I didn't hear
okay,
you.
no problem. I know there's a delay sometimes too, so I don't want to get too triggered. But
Yeah, I didn't mean to be rude.
But go ahead,
Yeah, and-
Anthony, and then I promise we'll come back to you, Neeina. I know you had a point as well that you want to still make. Anthony, what was your thing you were going to say?
First, I want to apologize to everybody because I know I'm interrupting, so that's on me. All right, put that out of the way. So, Grace, do you think every single woman is capable of breastfeeding? That they have the capacity to do it?
No, of course some women have.
Adequately, okay.
Most
So
women,
do you-
most though, like 90%
Sure.
at least. Most.
So in those instances where they're not able to, then is it important for the husband to be around to help, especially if there's other things that need to be done around the house? Like
Well-
if in where they're breastfeeding all the time, and that's what I'm saying.
the physical contact with the mother and the constant bonding is the most important to the newborn at that time. Whether it's formula or the breast milk, which is obviously much better, but like if it has to be formula because of a physical problem, then still it would be the mother. I've taken care of babies. Have either of you?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
so
my own child, but yeah.
okay, so like it's much more important for the mother to bond with it during that time.
Why
no?
is that more important for the mother to bond with the child than it is for the father? Wouldn't we think that in like ancient societies that there was not maybe a 50-50 split, but a little bit more equitable split between time spent between the two parents?
Well, the baby came out of the mother's body. It's obviously
Sure.
going to be more connected to her, and obviously breastfeeding and like the majority of the time is an intense physical bond that is
There's
unique
oxytocin,
to women.
all that stuff comes
Why
in.
don't you
There's the-
why don't you call it a matriarchy that only women can get pregnant and have kids and enjoy that experience, right?
I'm
Because
not
that's a
saying that.
natural order of things. Men can't experience that, right?
But you said
But do women
that
are women oppressing men because that's the nature?
But you said that men don't need to be around their children as much in those early months because they can't really do much, and it's important for women to bond with their child more.
Not nearly as
Studies that I have seen show that men that actually spend time with their children in early childhood, very early childhood, we're talking between the day of birth to 2 years old, are more likely to not only raise the child better because they have a more physical bond with that child and more emotional bond to them, but also are more capable of understanding what that child needs and have all these other kind of knock-on effects from there, right? So if we're telling men...
I'm sure that's true, but what the original point was in the workplace, men prefer to hire other men because women necessarily need to take time off to take care of their children, especially.
But men do too because of all that stuff that we're talking about.
No, they don't need to take
and
time off.
And it's society that says that men shouldn't be taking time off, that they should be the breadwinners, the providers, the go-getters, and push as much of their time off from their family as possible in order to bring as many resources into the family as possible.
So I don't think it's not a stretch to say that, if the father's at least a little bit around in the early stages, that would probably be better. But ultimately, how much time do fathers actually need to spend with newborn children compared to women?
It's not just newborn children, though. That's the thing. So if we're talking about, my point is,
so why would you necessitate paternity leave? My father spent a lot of time with me, and he was working full time.
Paternity leave increases the amount of bonding that can happen between a father and his child, as well as also taking some of the house taking needs off the mother's
I
shoulders.
just think that's ridiculous. I've seen men with babies. I've seen men with babies. Babies drive men crazy. They want to work while the baby's young.
That is...
Babies drive men crazy. The constant
is...
But aren't you missing the factor that it's also increases the likelihood that the household is going to be broke?
No, not in a society that's more equitable, which is the whole point.
Yeah,
but I've talked long enough. I want to get Neeina in on this.
You're saying it's sustainable for any industrial society to give both maternity leave and paternity leave for these same, I imagine, be roughly the equal amount of time in your view? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, because a lot of times when that is provided, that you are going to stay at that company longer. So I'm sure you know it's a lot cheaper to maintain employees than to hire new ones, right?
Wait, you're saying that you believe that there should be both paternity and maternity leave for an equal amount?
Absolutely.
That's not sustainable though. And
other countries do it.
Which country?
Germany does it. Germany gives. You think Germany is not industrious?
Germany gives an equal amount.
Yeah, they get like 6 months, dude.
For both men and women, an equal amount of time.
I'm not sure it's an equal amounts, but obviously it's significantly more than what the United States gives on either end.
To clarify this point, just to clarify this point a bit, some countries do it where it's split between the family, so this family can decide how much time they split, and other countries do it's a mandate. Some countries do a mandatory, and some countries do a 50-50. That's all I want to say. I'm turning my mic off.
Okay, if any countries are doing that, that's extremely unnatural and frankly bizarre, because everyone knows with any amount of experience that men actually do not need to be around newborn children as much as women do.
It's not just for newborns.
If it's mandated,
I'll give you it blankly then. Men do not need to be around their kids as much as
but what about taking care of their wife?
For example,
if she got a cesarean, that's like a but that happens.
Taking care of someone who's sick and has no one else to take care of them in a traditional society.
Okay, but that happens right after you have.
In a traditional society, usually it's the extended family that does that, the grandmother, the aunts. The
what if you don't have that?
Then you have it. Then you have an anomaly.
Let me finish this, Grace. You're right. We don't have that. We don't have traditional communities anymore because the role of patriarchy, it seems like, is diminishing. And those two are intimately related, actually.
So if they die, that's related to, like, if you just don't have like family, that is.
Yeah, the decline.
What is the connection there?
The decline of traditional communities is happening for the same reason that there's a decline of masculinity. There's a decline of an acknowledgement of the necessity of a patriarchy.
Okay, so you want to change subject? I don't know. What do you feel? Do we want to change subject here?
I'm
okay with doing it.
Because you said, well, what if she has a cesarean section and she needs someone to take care of her? Traditionally, she would have an extended family, women primarily.
So her husband. I thought the traditional masculinity would be that the husband takes care of the family. So shouldn't he?
No, of course. A woman who's been through childbirth would be better to be taken care of by other women. That makes more sense. It's more natural.
This is to intuitive nature is kind of beyond what the actual discussion of the topic was supposed to be. But that's just my opinion.
No, but this gets
actually a direct
I'm going to get back to.
He's right. Yeah. It is a direct example. This gets down to the heart of the matter. Do you guys admit that there's differences between men and women? For example, it's much more important and women much prefer
Everybody
to be with
agrees.
to be with their kids in early childhood.
There is,
and men do not prefer it.
The argument wasn't just about infancy. It's childhood in general, and paternity leave is not just after the birth in many countries. It's up to 2 or 3 years old. And so when we're talking about having this equitable time for fathers to spend time with their children, it improves the relationship between the father and the child. It improves the child's well-being. It improves the relationship between the father and the mother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The idea that men don't want to have any of this in their lives, the idea that men shouldn't have any.
I'm not saying not any. I'm saying much less.
He wasn't done.
I'll simplify it. Crowdsourced, would that have been a sustainable policy like in World War II or something for soldiers?
No, I already said that the material conditions have changed significantly between the time that patriarchy came into existence and today.
Possible anymore. Emergency crisis are not possible anymore.
An emergency crisis is still possible, but the idea that now it can only be men that are fighting on the front lines because we have to wield giant fucking swords and take off people's heads is just not the reality in which we live in. We have more technology that allows people to bomb people from other sides of the fucking planet, and that allows women to actually do these roles as well.
I'm also interested in what you gave the example of Germany, because it's like, first of all, the fertility rates in these European countries are very low. So having a kid seems like an exceptional event in the first place.
That's true.
Also, I'm also curious in the data as far as how many men actually take 6 months off of work after having a kid in Germany. I'm actually curious.
To answer that question, because I kind of know it off the top of my head, it's going to be generalized to Europe in general. Men take a little bit less time than they do than the women do, but not much. I think it's like 20% at tops.
Well, I'm not saying having the right to take off the time. Like, do they?
No, I'm saying I'm saying like comparatively, women take a little bit more time off with the family than men do, and it's around 20% or so tops. So that women take 20% more.
Women only take around 20% more off of work when they have a child than a man.
No, just not when they have a child, because there can be complications. But the maternity and paternity leave isn't just right after birth in these countries. It is, I think, it's up to the age of 3. So that can be spread out throughout the entire person's, spread out those years. Yeah, and it's different in each country.
Okay, so to be clear about what I'm talking about, Europe has a lot of policies that allow their workers to take time off for a lot of things, vacation, these kind of things. But what I'm primarily focused on here is when you have just given birth, right? And you need to take time off, not only to recover, but actually to like take care of the baby, the infant, for a period of time. And the issue is that in a lot of work environments with much less flexibility than in the case of Europe, you can advocate for that if you want. But when someone suddenly has a baby, I don't think it would be sustainable for a man to just be like, you know what? I just had a child, so I need to take like 3 years off of my job. I don't.
No, it's like it's not 3 years. It's like something like 6 months, and you have to spread it out. There's different rules and regulations.
Well, it's sustainable in Germany because Germany has an extremely low birth rate.
Birth rate is falling. Birth rate is falling.
So does America.
You're saying something extremely important though. Even if we are to believe men get 6 months paternity leave in Germany, I'm not sure about that 100%. By the way. Because people are saying they Googled it and it's only 2 weeks, right? But you're saying that it's spread out, and it's spread out.
It depends on the country. I don't want to focus on Germany. I'm talking about.
You need to appreciate the fact that getting pregnant, if you're a woman, is much more. It's much more necessary to immediately take time off than if you're a man. And that's we're not talking about some prolonged period of you get Fridays off every other month or something.
And I'm not talking about that. We're talking about paternity and maternity leave specifically.
Would you agree that pregnancies interrupt jobs in the case of women more than it does in the case of men?
Sure, but that's not the argument.
Just because is that unjust, or should it be the same?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you think it's unjust that female pregnancies interrupt jobs for women more than?
No, that's natural.
Okay. Well, that's what we're trying to say here. One of the possible reasons why women would want to not be hired over a man is because of that possible interruption.
Yeah, but that's a possibility. That's not every single woman is not going to get pregnant. As you said, the Germany's got a declining birth rate.
Right, because those women have been masculinized.
But that's
because
not
people are anti-patriarchy,
debate.
And so then they masculinize women. And then women don't have kids, and the entire country declines. How is this pro-women?
How is this How is this anti-patriarchy? I don't understand this whole tangent of an argument. It doesn't really make sense to me right now.
Because we're basically trying to say that even in your ideal circumstances of a meritocracy, it's probably likely that there's going to be a lot of scenarios you would still continue to describe as patriarchal, and that's extremely
No. Okay, I gotcha. So to kind of answer that bit of the question, I would say that in a society that generally pushes men to do things that they don't want and women to do things that they don't want is an unjust society. Whether that's social, what we're talking about here,
yes,
right?
you just made that point. In Germany, they push women to work, which most women don't really want to do as much as men, and they push men to stay home with their kids,
that is
which most
an
men don't really want to
assumption.
do.
I think
That's an assumption.
Your system is the oppressive one. The system that you point to is the oppressive
The one where you have freedom?
I think you're being a little bit vague when you say want. Are you talking about immediate wants or wants that someone...
I am talking about what a person...
Or wants that you would consider to be reasonable for someone in the long term that, yeah, sometimes society does have to take responsibility for. Children would want to just eat candy all day rather than spinach. But
it's a combination. I would say a combination. So like if
example,
a woman...
I'll give you an example.
Okay, well, listen to your example.
This is a really superficial one. It's just very personal.
Sure.
But it can be applied to other things. Do I always want to go to the gym? Not really, but I do it anyway, right? Because I know in the long term, it's better for me. So men oftentimes don't want to do a lot of the things that the patriarchy makes them do, but that doesn't address the question of whether or not in the long run, it's actually better for them. Men might not want to have to like defend their families in a fist fight and the moment of it, right? But that could be the difference between losing your family and not losing your family when you have to defend them.
A woman could do the same thing. I mean,
that's not true. Women cannot.
No.
When I say the same thing, hold on. When I say the same thing, I'm talking generally here. You said fist fight, so we can cite this to a gun or whatever else. I'm saying that women are going to end up doing the same thing.
You even pointed out that female cops with guns against me are less likely to pull the trigger. Women are less violent and confrontational than men are. So yes, men, it is something that the patriarchy enforces on men, that they have the duty to protect their family, okay, being protectors. And I don't think that's unjust. I don't think that's oppressing men. I think that's something that's good for men and good for humanity in the long run, even if in the short term, it may make you uncomfortable.
It can rise to the sense of injustice, or not injustice, I should say. God, words. Injustice, when it is taken to an extreme where people that are not naturally predicated to do these things are then forced to. And that is what generally patriarchy does. That's generally what things do. But this is an assumption that you're saying. Okay, so Grace, you keep
call
bringing this up.
everything I say an assumption.
No. I want to address
this. An assumption.
I want to address this.
It's called common sense and experience.
Yeah, the common sense doesn't exist.
No, it's not an assumption.
Common sense doesn't exist.
Here's something that we all agree is not an assumption.
Hold on one sec. Just before it goes off the rails, hold on one sec. Is one person we haven't heard from for a while. Let's kick it over to Neeina. Then we'll come back to you, Grace. Then we'll go back to Anthony.
We were just on the assumption.
Hold on. Oh. Seriously, Grace. Then we'll go back to infrared last. All right, go ahead, Neeina.
I don't want to derail too much, but yes, everything that you and Haas have both been saying are assumptions. You don't have any data to back up what you're saying. You're just saying random shit about how you feel. If you're going to talk about common sense, that's literally what an assumption is. That's what you just think is the case. That is an assumption. That is common sense. No, come on. You have to have data to back up your shit if you're going to make claims like that. So yeah, go ahead and go. I think Crowd was going next.
No, I think I was supposed to go next. Right, James?
Okay, you're rebuttal.
Okay, is it an assumption to say that men are physically more powerful than women? Or is that common
data
sense?
To back that up.
Obviously, okay.
Okay,
is
but
it
you
an
understand the
assumption to
difference
say
between
that
data and...
Data can be biased both
sense?
ways. Common sense. I know...
Okay, it could be biased both ways.
Wait.
There's a consensus, though, typically, when it comes to data.
Look, here's an assumption we can all agree on, okay? You don't need data for this. Women generally in the workplace are distracted by the fact, if they have kids, they're distracted by them and they're focused on them and takes away from their work, right? Even if it's not newborns, right? Generally, women are going to be concerned about their kids, right? In the workforce.
Can we all agree that that's true? Or are you saying that is basis
Women
for
are going to be
everyone?
thinking about their kids, how they're doing in school, their emotion, taking care of them. They're going to be concerned with that, and it's going to take away from their focus. So you're implying
that men don't do that, right?
Can we just agree that for women, that is a problem?
Okay,
that is why most men prefer to hire other men.
Is saying So
That's
okay,
obviously
so if your
true. If
assumption is
you
that
have
men
kids and they're in
should
preschool.
fire other men, so you think that men don't do that? Don't think about their kids?
Okay, do you know what being maternal is? Do you know what being a mother is? It's called.
Okay, you just need to answer the question. Do you think that men don't do that?
I don't think they do it nearly as much when the children are young. No,
Okay,
the women are
so
connected
that's
to them
where the
emotionally.
assumption is. Do you have any data to back that up?
Okay,
I would assume that men do care about their kids.
I've seen my family, right? My mother had 6 kids. I've taken care of those kids. I've seen the way my dad interacts with them and my brothers when they got older. Okay. They do not have as close of an emotional bond with the kids. It's common fucking sense. That's what mothers do.
That's an assumption based off of your
That's not an assumption.
data.
That's reality. That is reality. So what does it mean when a mother breastfeeds her kid? What does it mean when a mother breastfeeds her kid? So that's just equal to the man's emotional bond. The mother has a deep bond with children in early childhood. Obviously, they are literally taking food from her breast. It's intensely, they're connected. Men don't have that, okay? So obviously there's a link between mothers and children that men don't have until the kids get older. Can we agree on that, or are we not in reality?
I don't see any stats on that. So
do you need stats to prove that women breastfeed? Do you need stats to prove that?
That's not the point that you're making.
What you don't understand.
That's not what I was making at all.
Neeina,
you're talking about bonds.
So you don't think breastfeeding creates a deeper bond? And men can't breastfeed,
is there
right?
Statistics on that?
You need statistics to figure out if breastfeeding creates a deep bond with that child.
A deeper than just like loving your child.
Deeper in early childhood.
So you think that men just can't like love their child? I don't know.
You keep strawmanning. You keep saying, "Oh, so men can't love their child." I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's much more personal, intense, and deep and intimate.
So they love their child less. That's literally what you're saying. I'm not strawmanning. You're saying
it's just in a different way. It's closer with the mother in early childhood, and then when the kids get older, generally they're closer with their father.
You say more. You're saying more, so that implies that one is less. You understand?
Neeina, I'm winning. I'm winning. You can keep trying to deny reality, but obviously breastfeeding a kid creates a closer, more intimate relationship. Okay, and men can't do that with their
I don't
kids.
necessarily doubt that, but I'm just saying that's something that you need to have stats.
I need to have statistics to prove that having a kid sucking off my breast is not going to make it more intimate than a man with a kid. I need stats to prove that. If I was cradling a kid right now, I need stats to prove that that's more intense.
Skin to skin contact is actually statistically a huge way to bond with your child, and that doesn't require you having titties.
Yep, but obviously because women naturally
we have stats on that.
Sure, but women obviously skin to skin.
That's not common sense to people. Though is my point.
Yes, it is. Obviously, you should be physically intimate.
There's plenty of people who didn't know that.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, you should cuddle your kids and be physically close with them. Everybody
I think
knows
we're getting off the rails there.
But if most of society,
you're denying reality, and then you say, "Well, I'm losing the argument." I think we're getting off the rails.
I'm saying your argument, Neeina, your argument is just your point of view is incompatible with how any civilization, how families would function in any civilization. You're trying to say that we need to consult some kind of pretense of impersonal data by an institution, which you just admitted was just based in consensus and therefore, in some sense, can also just be feelings. How data is structured is subjected to the same
I'm talking about scientific consensus.
Right. But Dr. Fauci was scientific. Look, how scientific data
that was one person.
How scientific, it's an example of scientific authority being abused, right?
All right, we can't talk about the name that cannot be spoken.
Sorry.
Oh, right, we can talk about that.
See, listen, how data is structured is subjected to the same amount of human factors as the sacred relationship between an infant child and a mother, which you're trying to dismiss because you don't think there's data behind the fact that women, when they breastfeed their baby, that's creating some kind of like fundamental, like primal sacred bond. You could say, Haas, that's just your feeling, but the book has to.
She needs stats. She needs stats to back it up.
No, I said there is stats for that.
Neeina, if we're human beings engaged in communication, the buck has to stop somewhere. Like, you have to call a spade a spade. You can't just sit here and say that we don't have a special connection to our mothers because there's no stats that confirm that. I don't need stats. Nobody I know who's an actual sensible, normal human being needs stats to confirm that they would die for their mother in a way they would die for no one else. That's a human quality we have. And if you don't understand that because it's not being translated in some kind of so-called impersonal scientific language, I doubt you could even function as a human being living the life that you live. At some point, you have to understand and acknowledge we have to talk about common sense. Otherwise, all language becomes meaningless.
Right, so
Yes.
I understand that apparently you don't believe in any of that. That obviously was not my point, but I think that we've been on this point for too long. So I don't know if we want to get back to the topic here. I'm just saying that empirical data is important.
No, you said you needed stats, and you said anything I say without
That's what
statistics
empirical
is an
data
assumption.
is. Okay?
No, you didn't say it's nice to have empirical data. You said I
I
need
didn't say it's
statistics.
nice. I said it's important to have it.
Okay, you didn't say it's important. You said
When you're making an
unless
assertion, you should have
unless
it.
I have statistics, then
Can
it's
I-
an assumption. So
Yep.
you said it's necessary, not that it's important,
Let's jump over to
which is obviously
Anthony.
ludicrous.
For you to make a claim, yes, it is necessary.
Okay,
Let's
so for
jump
anybody
over
to make
to
a claim, they need
Anthony.
stats to back it up.
All right, hold on.
Do you have stats
Simmer
to back
down.
up that
All right,
claim?
simmer down, Grace. We're going to kick it over to Anthony.
Where's the stats to back up your claim? Sorry.
Shut up. We're going to kick it over to Anthony.
Yeah, so I think Nina's point on this wasn't so much about stats or anything else like that. It's the point that what we're actually trying to get at is whether or not there is if that assumption of the woman being distracted at work is going to actually negatively impact the quality of work, or if that could actually have a positive impact of the quality of work because they want to make sure they can get their job done faster than a man does in order to get back home to their kids and be with them on a more regular basis. Now, to talk about a little bit of thing that might be considered patriarchy by some people, but I don't consider it patriarchy, is the notion that some women actually work a little bit less than men because they want to spend time with their children. This is a empirical fact that exists within the data of the gender wage gap. If you count for job to job, hour to hour, minute to minute, whatever, title to title, all those things that you can think of, it's roughly 10% of a gap. And the majority of that gap happens after a woman turns 30 because that's typically when they have kids. So this is to back up your point, Grace, but let me finish just for a second here. But what we have to talk about here is whether or not that is going to be everybody's position and whether or not that is going to be a generalized position enough to where we can say, this is actually what we should have. We haven't gotten to that. We haven't made any kind of argument to that.
I can't let you get away with this, though. You said, well, maybe if you're distracted during work, that actually is helpful. This is the problem. You guys are just not living in reality. Obviously, being distracted and not focused at work is going to be detrimental to your work.
Okay, so let's do this rhetorically then. Okay. Say I am a person that really super cares about my kids and I want to spend every single waking hour that I can with my kid. But I have to make this bread. So what am I going to do? Am I going to sit there and agonize over the child while I'm at work? Or am I going to be like, okay, this child's in my mind. I want to really get with my child. I'm going to get my work done early so I can take out early today. Do you think that is more likely to happen than a person neurotically thinking about their child and getting distracted every 2 seconds to the point that it negatively impacts their work? What do you think is more likely to happen?
Well, okay, what I'm saying is that women do not prefer to be in work. Look, if I had a kid, and I know you're going to say this is just me or whatever, but this is true of most women. If you have a kid who's in preschool, you'd rather be with that kid than at work, knowing that that kid is getting taken care of by somebody else, is going to emotionally bond with somebody else and think of them as his mother. That's true.
That is the common sense assumption that is based on a whole host of things that you can't tease out sociologically.
That's also true of men. It would also be true of men that they wouldn't be happy that their kids are being parented by somebody else. But it's super true of women because they have that emotional bond with the kid.
But if it's true of men and it's true of women, then what we should seek to do is have meritocracy where the family can make those decisions themselves and have an issue and have the bonding and everything else instead of just saying, hey, man, you're a man. Your job is to go and make the bread. Hey, woman, your job is to go and be with your kid. And there's nothing else we can do about it.
But you assume that somebody's enforcing this. Men
it doesn't matter if it's enforced.
Men don't want to be around little kids, and women prefer to be around little kids.
But why? You have to ask why.
I don't like being around little kids.
Why do women breastfeed? It's natural. I don't know what to tell you.
You can't.
Breastfeeding isn't natural. Okay.
No, it's just not relevant.
Here's the issue that I'm seeing.
Plenty of women can breastfeed.
When you talk about meritocracy, it doesn't seem like you're actually referring to some institution. Doesn't seem like you're actually referring to something professional, formal or at the level of law. It seems like you're referring to something at the level of culture.
Yes, we're talking about culture.
Okay, so in your view, men are pressured to fulfill roles that in the immediate moment they may not want to, and you're saying by adopting meritocracy, we are going to do what? Just have men and women do everything they just feel like? Now,
it's not whether or not they feel like. There's still social. And I'm just going to cut you off right here, so that we don't.
Wait! You went on a big spiel. Let him go.
I have to make an.
No, I know, but I just want to get to the point.
I have to make an important point. Okay, I have to make an important point here, which is that the issue with that is it's missing the factor of wisdom. Men and women, adult men and women, don't have all the answers to life, but the best we can do is listen to what our parents say who have experience. Listen to what their parents say who have experience. There's people who came before us who had experience.
Sure.
And that patriarchy you're talking about, that's cultural, is really, in many ways, you can say in some ways it's not, well, in many ways at least, it's the result of that generational experience. So by depriving grandma the right to call her son a pussy for not sitting in and defending his wife, right? Because this is what we're talking about here. You're depriving that man the wisdom of the generations that came before him.
There's no depriving.
If a man is put into a situation where he has to be the breadwinner and the protector, and he's like, oh, I'd rather play video games instead. And then his mother steps in and say, you're a fucking pussy. Go out and work and do this job for your wife. He may not like that, but human beings are not individualistic atoms. That grandmother, that mother of his, is giving him generational wisdom passed down from generations that has allowed human beings to cope with the various contradictions of life. So when you say this is patriarchy, it sounds like what you're actually saying is we want to wipe out all of these organic human interactions across generations and basically replace that with what? Everyone doing whatever they want
it's
to.
not anybody doing whatever they want. There's still going to be social responsibilities. The question is are those social responsibilities better for an individual to follow a generalized norm, which we're talking about in this debate is patriarchy, or if it's better for an individual and in their social circles to come to an understanding whether that they themselves are going to be better taking care of the kid just because they're a man, and the woman's going to be better going out to work and doing that. And if you have a society set up in such a way where every single person is pushed to fulfill a very narrow role in society, you are inherently taking away the talents from everybody else because you are pushing people to do things that they are not naturally inclined to do. The guy that you're talking about sitting on his ass, eating fucking Starburst or whatever while playing video games and not with his wife, well, that guy is a piece of shit, right? But that guy's not a piece of shit because patriarchy isn't kicking them in the ass. He's a piece of shit because he's a piece of shit.
Why is he a piece of shit, though, according to your own logic?
Because he's not doing anything that is productive in general. He's just sitting on his ass. He has a child that he needs to take care of, and that child he can take care of in numerous different ways. Well, but if he's just sitting on his ass and not doing anything, then he's a piece of shit.
What if he wants to hold the baby in one arm and play Xbox in the other, and he tells his wife, go out and work for us and provide for us? Is that fair?
That happens. I don't know. Is that going to be better for that particular family? Is that going to be protected?
Well, don't you think it could be kind of
abusive? Don't assume things about me, please. I did not make any assumptions about you.
Don't you think that could be kind of abusive and unfair? Because granted, women, when they're at home raising the kid, sometimes they do, it's like a 24/7 thing, but sometimes they take all the rest they can get and relax or watch TV.
Yeah, I'm not.
And, a woman watching TV with her kid and the man going out and working seems to be something fair to most of us. But if we swap that role, do you think that's the same? And that's also.
I would say that what we should do as a society, if that role is swapped, that should be looked as fair because that is the ability. That is what that family has decided to do, and it works best for them. So let me talk about a little bit about myself here.
Hold on. How does the family know if it's the best for them if they're inexperienced? If they don't have.
I have a personal example I can give you. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a severely autistic brother. He is 3 years younger than me, so he is currently 35. He cannot take care of himself. When my mom and dad were together and find out that he was autistic, my mom was not capable of taking care of him properly. Not doing it. She couldn't watch him as well as my dad could, all this other stuff. So she became the breadwinner of the household. My dad was the person that took care of us. Now, did he do a great job? whose parents do a great job, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter to the discussion. But the point is that is what worked for our particular family. He was called a lazy piece of shit my entire life without anybody understanding what our family was going through. My brother would run into the street. He would climb out windows. There was a day where my dad went out to get groceries and my mom was with us. My brother magically managed to claw out a window that was above our kitchen and almost break his fucking neck. If my mom was to take care of us in the way that you are prescribing, I don't know what would happen to us. But since it was my dad, we were actually pretty much okay.
So your dad made the decision to take care of you. Great.
It was a decision reached by the family. But if we're talking about patriarchy, which is what a sociological system is, that would end up breaking my dad down as being a lazy piece of shit,
why can't he decide to take care of you guys if that makes more sense? Why can't he decide to?
Because the patriarchy would make fun of him, demean him, etc., for not being manly.
I don't agree with your example, because it seems like in this case, the necessary role of the father staying home, and you have to have thick skin. I'm not going to insult anyone, but you have to have thick skin because you brought it up in the debate. Sure. The necessary role for the father in this case would just be restraining the strength of your brother, right? Which your mother would not be able to restrain him in the same way your father could.
No, it wasn't like that. It was myriad of other different things that I don't want to particularly get into.
Okay, well, just say the example you gave that's supposed to be sensible to us. It seems reasonable.
It has nothing to do with strength. It was other things. It wasn't strength. It was ability.
It seems reasonable to suggest that it takes a man to be able to restrain someone who
it wasn't a restraint thing. I know that you're saying this is reasonable.
That's how you made it sound. That's exactly how you made it sound.
It was about watching, paying attention to us. It was a whole host of other different issues that I'd rather not get into.
I really don't want to get into your personal life. So whatever example you're going to use, you have to give us the reason why it was more reasonable.
I did. It was ability. It wasn't strength, though. It had nothing to do with physical prowess.
He had the ability to make sure that your brother was not getting into dangerous situations.
Correct.
In a way that
my mom could not. Correct. Okay. It had nothing to do with strength, though.
If this is not just based on strength, I mean, I think it would be reasonable to suggest that that seems to be an extraordinarily exceptional circumstance.
I agree. It is an exceptional circumstance.
But right, whatever that mysterious reason is, that exception should not be elevated to the status of the tyranny.
It's not.
The norm.
The problem that we have is that the generalized norm of what the patriarchy is, of what we're talking about, would demean my father and take away his dignity.
Well,
actually, no. I think the patriarchy. If it was patriarchy,
crowdsourced. I just think you're kind of underestimating how communities on an organic level are capable of adapting.
I am talking about my family's experience in the Midwest, which was very much following what you guys are talking about in the 80s and 90s.
It's such an exceptional thing, right? That's what comes with it. I think people should be more understanding of particular circumstances, but you cannot expect to erase generational norms just because your family happens to be an exception.
It's not about erasing generational norms. It is about creating a society that allows people to do these things.
One second. I do want to, before we go, we have to go into the Q&A really quick here.
Yeah.
So, Infrared, if you want to wrap this point up really quick in terms of your last rebuttal, and then I want to get a chance, right after that, I want to get a chance from each Neeina and Grace, as I think they had both wanted to put something in the last couple of minutes. Go ahead, Infrared.
Yeah, I would say, it's a shame that most people probably don't have the time or the energy to be more understanding and have a closer examination of certain irregular situations than they should. But that's what makes those situations irregular. If people are ignorant and just have a blanket kind of prejudice over something because of only a number of factors, the woman's the breadwinner, the man staying home, that is not necessary. I mean, all you could really ask for people to do is to be less judgmental and more understanding. But what you cannot ask them to do is to reverse the general expectation, the general norm, and it is a general norm, that the man should be going out and working and providing for the family. That is not what's incriminated here. The thing you're trying to incriminate is just people's lack of being able to be more understanding of specific situations. Generalities are not things you just apply dictatorially to every situation. They're general tendencies, generalities. They're things that are what you call the rule, not the exception.
You got it. Any last thoughts? I view it as it's really pithy, Anthony. I can give you a quick response, and then, like I said, Neeina and Grace, I want to hear from too. But we do have the Q&A coming up, so you also may have chances to get kind of those ideas if you have any lingering points you want to make during the Q&A, as there's a pretty good eclectic mix of questions. But any last thoughts, Neeina and Grace, before we go into the Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Neeina, first.
Okay. I just have to respond to Haz there. It really just sounds like you're saying patriarchy is when no patriarchy, because if you're saying that people should accept that, that's not what the patriarchy encourages. The patriarchy encourages condemning what he's talking about. So it really seems like, for one, that you really don't actually want to side with the patriarchy, and you don't really know what exactly you're talking about here. It's a little confusing on your. Did I talk during yours? Did I talk during yours?
I think you did, yeah.
Not your most recent one. So let's go ahead, Neeina and Infrared. Let's give her a chance to wrap it up. We give you a good, I don't know what it was, maybe 2 minutes or so. Neeina, if you want to wrap up your point, and then we'll go over to Grace.
Yeah, sounds good. I won't go that long. I just have a few more things to say. Just the surprising lack of statistics and just feels over reals is kind of amazing to see. It really seems like you're just posting because you didn't really know what the fuck you were talking about, and you didn't really come in here with actually doing any having any arguments.
Literally,
so it just seems like you're just doing a bunch of you're still doing it. You're still doing it. It's okay. No, I can talk over you too. It's fine. I can talk over you too. It's not a big problem. I know you love doing the talking over thing. And I think that you really, just as you do with most of your arguments, you just kind of say things and you talk over people. You do your what is it? Your not your gish gallop. The what's your word? Now you can talk. What's the word that you like to use? I know Vosh has been using it recently, and I heard it pissed you off.
The word is absolute domination of the opponent, is what you're.
No. Were you when you say like you talk when somebody talks too much?
Yeah, that's it, Neeina. Keep going. Go ahead.
You talk way too much.
No. Okay, what is the word? You said it multiple times and just forget.
The word is.
I know.
The word is womanhood. You guys just love talking and saying nothing.
Okay, you kind of insult
you walked
yourself
into
with
that one.
I'm asking you. I don't know what I walked into. I'm asking the question what you've been doing this whole time, and he responded with that. So very funny that you would say that.
I've been absolutely dissecting.
What is the word that
just
Vosh has been using that you get really
just
mad? So you get really mad. It's not Gish Gallop, right? It's
the word
the
is
infrared hop. All right, we've got to go to Grace next. Grace, what have you got?
Okay, first of all, Neeina, your whole thing about stats is bad faith because Crowdsourced gave a personal story and we took it seriously. We didn't demand that he give us stats and say, that's not real. Okay, secondly, I have a similar situation to Crowdsourced because my mother also has serious problems parenting and serious issues with her femininity. But I don't blame that on an oppressive patriarchy. I would say the problem there is a personal problem that actually comes about because of this feminist society where women are not in touch with their emotions. They are not encouraged to be feminine. They are not encouraged to be mothers. And therefore, they end up leaving people like me and Crowdsourced in situations where the mothers can't deal with children, which is extremely, extremely bad for society. It's a huge, huge problem. And autism, whatever you want to say about it, that's on the rise because, in some ways, because of lack of emotional bonding when the children are young. So the patriarchy would actually help with that problem. In the patriarchy in the sense that men should follow their natures and women should follow their natures, and men should not be feminized and women should not be dykeified. Thank you.
Any last thoughts, Neeina? I know you got kind of short. You got cut short a bit by the infrared hop there at the end. But as he hopped into action, any last thoughts, Neeina?
Just everything that you've said, Grace, is just so insane. I would love to actually have a one-on-one conversation with you because I don't know if you're just trolling at this point because you're just so ridiculous. You just said, I'm sorry, what did you say? Dykeification? Don't know what the fuck that means. I think that masculinity and femininity is clearly a social trait if we're not talking about physical features. And it's very stupid to think that those things have not changed over the years. Being masculine used to be being very emotional and crying a lot, and showing your strength by being passionate on things. Being masculine used to be wearing a lot of jewelry. Being masculine used to be wearing dresses. These things have changed, and they will always change. That's just how social things work, and I think you just don't understand that.
Haz is masculine, Crowdsourced is not, and that's never going to change.
Oh, come on. Crowdsourced was pleasant this whole time. All right, we're gonna.
That's true. That's true. He's nice.
I have to be honest.
Crowdsource,
we appreciate you, man. Grace.
Fine.
Infrared, masculine. Come on, really? Look at him over there. I'm kidding. Infrared, we love you.
I can't take long-haired men seriously. I'm sorry.
I want to give credit because, like I said, people maybe know originally Zerka's name was on the title as well as Frederick. We couldn't bring him in because Zerka didn't show. I don't know what happened, so I don't want to make a judgment. If something came up, he got in an accident or something. But Infrared was willing to jump in early, so to give him that credit. And also, I appreciate your beard, CSP. I appreciate all of our guests, which is why right now I've got to tell you folks, Neeina and Anthony, aka Crowdsourced Politics, and Grace and Infrared are all linked in the description. What are you waiting for? You've heard a good 2 hours almost of their views. You can hear more of their views. And even if you disagree, there's a real intellectual wholesomeness and maturity and wisdom about genuinely understanding people that you disagree with. So even if you don't agree with their positions, that's still a good reason to go there. We're going to jump into the Q&A. Want to say thank you for our guests. We appreciate you guys. It's been a lively one, which I appreciate too. I'd rather have you guys be passionate, which you have been tonight, rather than boring, because that's just sad. So this one from Thunderstorm says, patriarchy doesn't exist. Human nature does. Plus, Neeina is wrong and Grace is right. Wow, you got a fan. Is that Ben? Is that your dad? All right, we'll go over to
I say Neeina. That about every super chat that's positive for me.
Neeina, do you have any thoughts on that?
We really wouldn't be having this conversation if that was the case. It clearly is. It's like a theory, it's not like again, everyone wants to think it's like a person or a system of government. Patriarchy is not a system of government. It's just a system. And it's pretty dumb to think that that doesn't exist. Like saying words don't exist.
Juicy. Infinite Slick says, another great panel, Modern Day Debate. Thanks. All credit to our guests. By the way, if you're listening via the Modern Day Debate podcast, you can find our guests linked there in the description box for the podcast episode. They say another great panel. Grace Thorpe won the debate. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's like Ben has all these sock accounts. They say she is such a young, talented, oh my gosh, here we go. Fertile. Wow. Okay. And they say, and young, I didn't make that up.
That's interesting.
They really say that. And young, beautiful lady. Well, you know what? Let's see. They at least said, talented. So that encapsulates being a good debater. They said she is going places unlike, oh, geez, come on. Neena's sitting right here. Say she's going places unlike Neeina. Oh,
I'm glad my fertility came through during the debate. That's very good. Thank you.
This one from Coconut Cream Pie, so you know it's good based on the name. They say the patriarchy debate is irrelevant. Okay. They say the oversaturation of selfish capitalist values over communal values in Western culture is the actual issue. What are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, it is a problem, but
I think
it doesn't mean the patriarchy doesn't exist.
I think you want to talk about the problem of capitalism. I think it's the erosion of patriarchy, which is the foundation of traditional communal societies. Patriarchies, again, are based on specific communities governing and ruling according to traditions and established norms across generations. And the man is the authority that safeguards that. Whereas the capitalist society seems to go into the tendency of flattening out all of differences in order to commodify everything about our human interactions. So if you want to talk about the decline, individualism is an example of that, right? If you could just be an individual and just play video games all day and do whatever you want to feel like, hedonism, that's what capitalism promotes, as opposed to traditional values, which are communal, having to listen to your mother or your grandma or your father or your grandfather and so on. As far as how you have to run your life, you do have to be subjected to some kind of communal opinion and communal pressure. I think, they're not incompatible. It's not just, the problem isn't just capitalism. It's also the way capitalism undermines patriarchal authority.
Yeah, I'm going to have to completely disagree with Haas on this one. He's right about like how capitalism kind of like tamps down on certain traditional values, but capitalism and traditional values are not oxymoron. Yeah, oxymoronic. That's the word I was looking for. They've existed while both structures have existed. Capitalism is simply a structure of the economy and something socially that promotes, the material wealth of people over communal bonds necessarily. So that's not necessarily eroding patriarchy. Patriarchy can exist in a capitalistic system, and so can traditional values can exist in a capitalist system.
Well, capitalism turns men into other men's wage slaves. So, and men and
so
women,
does patriarchy. Patriarchy
no,
did that too.
Patriarchy
put men
patriarchy
to
would
war.
encourage men to own their own businesses for their own families and to
that's
be self-respecting instead of
I
being,
hate to do it, but just because we have so many questions. This one from Made by Jim Bob says, Crowdsourced Politics. If a true meritocracy was established, what means of force would you use to maintain and preserve it?
That's a good question. I'm not actually one to like to use force in order to maintain systems, just in general. So now that isn't to say that I wouldn't use force in defense of them against people that were actively trying to tear them down through nefarious means, whether it's counter-revolutionary people or whatever else it is, people who are trying to be violent, etc. So I guess that answers the question. And if it doesn't, hit me up later on Twitter or whatever.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Also want to say, folks, if you have not yet, hit that like button if you've enjoyed this debate. I'm a firm believer hitting the like button really does help in terms of this video being recommended to more people. So especially if you thought your side was more persuasive tonight, which pretty much everybody does on every debate, we want to say, hey, hit that like button and more people will see it. Made by Jim Bob says, crowdsource. If men were in fact superior and favored in most scenarios, wouldn't meritocracy and patriarchy be synonymous? If not, how so?
I would say that assuming that was the correct way that humanity is set up, yes. And I've already conceded that point to Grace when she said it. But I don't believe that is the case. I believe that there are various systems, social, cultural, economic, or whatever, that perpetuate the injustices that we experience. You
got it. Thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from, you guessed it, Made by Jim Bob. Oh, wait, there's actually Godzilla37 says Neeina. All right, come on. Ryan C. No, it's actually not that bad. They say, how many cats do you see yourself retiring with? Do you like cats, Neeina?
I have 2 corgis.
No cats?
No cats. Well, I live with somebody who has a cat, but it's not my cat.
Ha! Take that, Godzilla. This one from Ryan C.
Godzilla.
Says, Neeina, you celebrate your freedom in the U.S., yet the Constitution was written by a patriarchy. How do you support the claim that patriarchy is oppressive?
Well, obviously they meant, they were very specific on when they're, or I guess vague if you want to say it in whichever way you want to interpret it, about it being able to be changed. So I think that they were actually pretty forward thinking, that they were very patriarchal at the time, but they knew things were not going to change. And that goes for like pretty much everything that they wrote when we're talking about like the Constitution and stuff like that. It was supposed to be a living document.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Coconut Cream Pie says, fathers need to be with their kids, obviously. Anybody disagree with that? Fia Vasconcelos, let me know if I pronounced it right, says, as an RN and CHPN myself, why do you think there are very few men in hospice care? Or they say, is it a nature versus nurture thing? That's interesting.
I think hospice care requires a deep level of empathy and sympathy and compassion with those people. And I think men are more inclined to sort of logical medical procedures like surgeries and stuff like that, whereas women want to help people who are close to death in hospices. They take great joy in helping somebody, taking care of them. It's more of a relationship than it is just a medical procedure. That's what I would say.
I see. So I think Fia's original question, you interpreted it quicker than I did, was why is it that hospice workers giving care to those in hospice Or
Yeah.
overwhelmingly female? That was the question. Thanks for clarifying that, Grace.
Do you want to answer our side? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about like hospice, I don't really know any specifics about it, but I assume it's mostly nurse work. We're not talking about like, doctors, and obviously a lot of nurses are actually immigrants that are coming through and taking these jobs to and a lot of them tend to be women because men tend to do other jobs when they're working towards that. When we're talking about immigrants, that's a little bit beyond the pale here, but I don't really think that really means anything. If anything, I would imagine because a lot of them are immigrants, it's more traditional, like Hispanic immigrants. They're more traditionally related to family, and it's a cultural thing that works for them. I'm sure there's a lot of other aspects to it. I don't know the details of that particularly, but if we're talking about, again, like nursing in general, obviously the nursing profession is very much dominated female, so that kind of just tracks directly. I don't know where the hospice comes in.
There's going to be a pay disparity depending on the level of hospice that we're talking about.
Of course.
If it's just administering a medication, those are generally not. Those are orderlies that can administer medication in some states, and that pay is very low. So pay is going to be a factor of it.
You got it.
Well, how would pay be a factor of it? Women want less pay? What are you saying?
Men typically seek, one would say, men typically seek out higher pay, more competitive, etc. And so if there's a system designed to pays people like shit, and then it has a certain level of stuff, they're going to do different things.
Yeah, to add on to that, like,
aren't you kind of proving our position by saying
no. Okay, let me go on with that. Let me go with that. I understand what you're saying, but like, if we're talking about, there are patriarchal values that, like, as we were saying, like traditional people who are traditional are probably less interested in going after the highest paying job. They're just trying to get a job because they are not in that position where the structure of their family is not that they're being the main breadwinner. So the structure of their family is that they're just getting the job. Does that make sense?
But why do the female immigrants go for the hospice work? Even if we say it's immigrants, why do the female
It could be cultural. It could be cultural.
Right.
But is that
this doesn't necessarily?
I mean,
is that the patriarchy oppressing them? Is that a form of the patriarchy oppressing them?
No, I would assume that's their freedom of choice. But I don't. I mean, this has nothing to do with patriarchy.
Well, so why would women choose to be hospice workers, and the male immigrants would choose to go for higher paying jobs that require more work?
There's cultural difference.
Yes. Go ahead.
There are cultural differences that exist across nations, correct? We can all agree on that. And some cultures are more patriarchal than other cultures. And if it's a large number of immigrants coming into the United States, they are going to view that as women's work and not seek it as often.
But I just asked Neeina if that was oppressive, and she said, no, that's the women's free choice. So how does that work within the oppressive patriarchy? Is it free choice, or are they being oppressed by, are you saying Mexican culture is oppressive of women?
You have to move to the next one pretty quick here.
Okay. I just think that there's cultural values, and you could say that there's aspects of patriarchy to them, but I don't think that your values of maybe you want to have a traditional, like, as long as both people agree to it, that's fine. Well,
maybe two white, liberal, privileged Americans shouldn't be so quick to just judge somebody else's culture and say that the women are being oppressed by the men in that culture.
I don't think either of us.
Okay.
I don't think either of us said that they were being inherently oppressed. We just said.
I said, does Mexican culture oppress women? And you went, which is you're implying yes.
No.
Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe
I think you're reading into it. Can we move on?
We're gonna jump into the next one from Vile Van Gogh. Says, this clown parade wouldn't exist if it wasn't for thousands upon thousands of men with guns. What does that mean? Okay. Anybody
I
thoughts?
agree. It's true.
Can you repeat it?
Is that supposed to insult everyone? They say this clown parade, especially Haas and his hat, they say wouldn't exist if it wasn't for thousands upon thousands of men with guns.
I agree. I fully agree with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, men with guns, but also women who support those men. Men and women are symbiotic. You can't take one without the other. But yeah, it's true.
Which is ironic that you're saying that now, because that was part of your opening.
It basically means...
When did I say that men and women don't work with each other?
It basically means when you're outside enjoying yourself at a cafe, the one thing that's preventing some crazy naked crackhead with a hatchet attacking you is ultimately men with guns. You have to call the police, and if he's powerful enough, call the National Guard to rein him in. That's all that, that's all that really is. It's men with guns who defining who gets included and excluded from the community. And that's why the country can't be flooded with everyone from around the world. ISIS can't come into America and just start killing everyone because there's people at the border with guns. Every community you're in, even if I go on,
Who are those people trying to come and kill us?
Even if I go on the Google campus, they'll probably ban me from these big tech places, and I want to go like debate some pussy. Yeah, it's ultimately the law that's protecting you from me.
Yeah, it's force.
Men use force to decide who's in and
protect
who's out.
people from other men. So it kind of seems like the men are the problem.
A bouncer at the club is the guy who's preventing a crazy, naked crackhead with 2 baseball bats from running in and beating the shit out of everyone. Whether or not those people in the club deserve it.
Men have physical power. Yeah.
But it really seems like, as we know, the men are more likely to be that. So the men protecting us with guns are protecting us from men that have guns.
Listen, you can't live in a society of just females. There's men and women in this world.
Right. That would be crazy. I don't know why we would live in a society of just men. I don't know if that's just what you're interested in.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying.
But that is a non-statement.
Let me say something. Whatever the cause is, men with guns is patriarchy. Did you know that?
No.
This one coming in from...
No, it's okay.
Yes, it is.
Anthony does not agree. Yeah, so this one coming in from...
Guys, stop pouting. Can we have fun? Jesus. I know you lost, but I mean, come on. Have some...
I don't think I lost at all.
This one from...
let the moderator talk.
Based says, Grace is smoking these fools like those cigarettes she so sexually destroys. Wait, do you destroy cigarettes sexually?
Whoa!
Not Jay... What is it? Not... Lay Geno says, Grace won this from the opening statements. Wow, Grace, you have quite the fan base out there. They say coconut cream pie. He says, common sense are expected norms or actions within a given environment, social or otherwise. I don't know who that's supposed to support, but I mean, I think I know is like, but Sunflower says, Neeina is lashing out against the world because she's suffering from inner pain. Is there some deep inner pain that you're trying to compensate for, or by lashing out at the... That's what this person is. They're doing a little bit of psychoanalysis.
Against the patriarchy, of course.
Juicy. Godzilla37 says, Neeina, wow. Say, without a single doubt, most, if not all, children will cry out for mommy long before daddy. Common sense is a thing, in all caps.
Okay, so if they spend all their time with their dad, you think they don't cry out for daddy?
Anti-GTO
You're
highlights.
literally missing the entire point.
Hold on. I have to move fast. Anti-GTO highlights says the 27th Amendment states, quote unquote, women shall not have the right to run for any public or elected office. How can we fight against this horribly sexist law?
I'm for a meritocracy. I would say women should be able to try to do whatever they want, same as men, but I think it will naturally fall into a system like in Scandinavia where women take more feminine jobs and stay with their kids and men take more leadership positions. It is a meritocracy.
If you're going to have all these people talk about how you're winning, I feel like that doesn't make any sense.
I feel like you should stop mumbling. You're not going to crush the patriarchy anytime soon with that tone of voice.
I'm sorry, do you need me to talk louder? Saying if people are saying that you're winning, then it doesn't seem like you're making your position clear or arguing for it correctly. Because if they think that a patriarchy is the good thing, then why the fuck are you talking?
So once again, you're misunderstanding patriarchy as the oppression of women, the enslavement of women, the subjugation of women. All I'm saying is that men are naturally the leaders. That doesn't mean women don't have immense power and have a voice in things just like men.
But you're bringing it to matriarchy. So if you're the best one here, it probably shouldn't have been me or you, my guy.
We're going into Iron Horses. He says for infrared. Wow, infrared. Say, do you agree that it's not okay to beat your wife with anything thicker than your thumb? Rule of thumb is right? Come on, Iron Horse. What does that even mean? Yeah, Amelia says for crowdsourced politics, are you trans male? Says, how come you fall to cite studies and stats for everything in relation to societal roles for males When you pushed on specifics for these metrics, you are unable to recall specifics?
I don't understand what being trans has to do with it, but no, I'm cis. And it's just where we end up preparing different things for. And it's a debate. I'm not going to remember everything. So if you want specifics, again, hit me up on Twitter.
I get it now. Iron Horse Iron Horse. I think he thinks that you're a Muslim, and he's saying, I guess he's trying to. I just don't want us to get into a debate on Islam. Iron Horse. Maurice Smithville says, Neeina, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast today?
What?
He said, how would you feel? I don't get it.
How would I feel if I didn't eat breakfast? I ate lunch, so I'm sure I'd be fine.
Are all of you high? Like these questions, I just want. Amelia says,
I feel like that's an inside joke that nobody understands.
oh, is it? I don't get it.
I don't know.
I don't get it, so.
This one from Coconut Cream Pie. So patriarchy is enforced values on the masses? Sure. That's now society always, how it always worked. Patriarchy is a catch-all term to a set of values that somebody doesn't like, therefore irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that kind of position, but I don't think that's what anybody here was actually arguing. It's whether or not that patriarchy in and of itself can be a just system, or whether or not there's other ways or other systems that we can implement that are going to be more just than the current one. So there you go.
You got it. This one coming in.
What part of our system is unjust towards women? You have to back that up with some kind of an example.
Actually, this question's relevant. DeFreak says, how is everyone or anyone on the panel oppressed in any way?
Exactly. Except these two are oppressed by me and Has winning, obviously. They're pouting.
Cool.
I'm not pouting.
A little bit.
Oh.
You guys seem sad.
My back
I'm smiling.
hurts.
Sit up straight. Let's see some smiles,
am.
people. Come on.
This one coming in from Marsha Everett. Says males have naturally taken over because they're stronger, but that doesn't mean everyone else was happy about it. I don't choose to be born female. Let's stick with the first part.
Women love strong men. It's not true. Women love strong men and violent men. It's hot. I don't know what to tell you. It's nature.
This one
Women
from
aren't complaining.
Coconut Cream Pie says true. Meritocracy can't happen because the different humans adapt better different environments. There would have to be a perfect flat environment.
Sounds like they're approaching race realism there. Not gonna lie.
Wait,
I think they were talking about meritocracy on like their I mean, it's more of a meritocracy argument than a conversation about patriarchy.
Coffee Mom says patriarchy is based on the idea that biological sex is binary, but our sex is bimodal, not binary. What should patriarchy do to update itself?
Bimodal, not binary? Neeina, can you explain? I don't know. What do you mean?
Okay,
what does bimodal mean?
Well, binary means one or the other, so it can only be one or the other. Bimodal is the fact that it could be a combination. Like, for example, intersex people. Intersex people exist. They're not very common.
None are masculine.
But
there's no masculinity in that whatsoever.
That doesn't. That's fine. Okay, sure, whatever. But if we're talking about sex, you can't deny that intersex people exist, right?
That's like
wait, hold on. Before we get into that,
it's like the most rare.
It's true intersex with
okay.
But just hold on 1 second. I hate to do this,
so
but just because I was able to hold on, just because like I see the context. I think what they mean by shush wash or Haas. That was
what an insult! I think he needs reparations.
That was like a genuine Freudian slip. This is I don't know why, but this is the context of the super chat made me think like bimodal, as in like camel humps, the distribution where you have kind of like Neeina was saying, you have like people in the middle, but more so that like bimodal, it means that like most are either male or female, and then you have like a smaller number as the distribution goes toward the middle, and as it goes further out from male and female. So in other words,
binary is just referring to the humps to answer the question. Binary doesn't say like, there's no such thing as a more effeminate guy or a more masculine woman. Mm-hmm. It's referring to the fact that your frame of reference is ultimately going to come down to whether you're talking about combinations or spectrums within those. The ultimate frame of reference is these two humps, right? Male or female. You can say there's things in between. You can try and argue there's combinations, but it's always going to go back to those two terms.
So right, but bimodal just means that there is
reference to the terms that ground the different orientations, which is a generality. Just because there's exceptions doesn't invalidate the generality.
Okay, but no, but it can't be a binary if there's exceptions. That's just by definition. That's why it's bimodal.
Yes, as long as we are clear about.
I don't think we need to argue over this. Can we just move on?
Okay, so you lose.
This one. Okay.
Just look at the definition.
If you define the terms correctly, there can be a binary.
I hate to do this, but we have to. They say this one is sort of tanky. They say Neeina gonna need some stats on that. I don't know what they're talking about though. Marsha Everett says people's prejudices, like Grace's in parentheses, prevent people from doing things they don't traditionally do. That's what we don't like about patriarchy.
True.
Oh, that's absolutely wrong. I want men and women both to be happy. I'm just saying patriarchy is essentially meritocracy. It's just a recognition of the natural order of things. That doesn't mean, obviously, I'm up here on a debate panel. Obviously, I'm not super traditional, but I'm obviously pretty good at it. So,
that's not really interesting the question, though.
I'm not trying to force anybody to do anything, but if I came up here as a woman and I did a terrible job, I'm not saying that's because I'm a woman, but yeah, the meritocracy, I would be kicked out. And most women are way worse at debating than men. That is true.
This one coming in from, let's see.
It's just a recognition of how things are. But it doesn't mean that there can't be. Sorry, James.
Given it was originally, we're going to move to the next one. Bite Me XD says, happy Friday, everyone. Wishing you all a relaxing weekend with perfect weather. God bless. Thanks for your kind words, Bite Me. Jan R says, how is it practically possible to, quote unquote, remove patriarchy?
It's impossible.
I think it's a thing that's going to happen over time. I think equality is the removal of patriarchy.
What are you going to replace it with? Egalitarianism?
Meritocracy, egalitarianism, whatever.
Okay, yeah. But there has to be a leader, right? There is no functioning organization that doesn't have a leader.
Sometimes that person is going to be a woman. Sorry.
Okay, but most of the time are men better at being leaders?
I don't know that.
Do you have stats on that?
Oh my god. Okay.
There are different ways that men and women lead.
Okay, we can take it back to sex ed class. Do men give and women receive?
That has nothing to do with patriarchy.
Yes,
there's plenty of gay men.
Yes,
you understand that, right?
Men, that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. I'm saying men are the source and women are the receivers.
That has nothing to do with this argument, this debate.
Yes, it does.
It's a red herring.
Yes, it does. I'm saying there's a natural order to things. And
a natural order to things doesn't necessarily lead to patriarchy.
You're saying, I don't know what the natural
too.
I don't know what an erection is. I don't know what an erection is. Maybe it's the same thing as vagina.
Okay, I don't know what that first part of that sentence was, but they said, let's see, Just LOL says Grace. Okay, gosh, is really pretty and feisty. It's cute. You also seem kind of crazy. By the way, let's see, patriarchy reigns supreme. All right. Ben Nowak. What is the word they use? Sims? Okay, they say, Neeina, will there be a rematch between you and Grace after your...
anytime, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I don't know if I cut you off with a question. But no, absolutely. I would love to talk to you again, Grace.
This one from Coconut Cream Pie says, Grace is hot equals winning. We got some Simpson here.
Hey, wait a second. Wait. Me and Neeina are both equally attractive. She is extremely pretty. The difference is I love men and she doesn't. That's what makes me hot. Sorry.
Wow.
Oh, so we got to pick me in here.
I am pansexual,
I'm joking.
so I do love...
Sorry, men like women who love men.
I'm kidding. Well, anyways.
I'm a men's rights activist in the term that I actually want men to not be slaving under the yoke of patriarchy. So.
This one coming in from Marsha Everett says, Infrared, you're so lucky you were born male where you get all the benefits. Alpha Ape suppresses other males from access to females. Not happy.
Okay.
What was the second part?
They say Alpha Ape suppresses other males from access to
Alpha
females.
8?
Alpha Ape with a P.
Like,
Oh, Alpha 8. Okay, I see.
Do you like
All
that?
right.
You're just like, okay, fair enough.
Am I the ape or
Right.
what's going on? I don't understand.
I guess they say
It's too late in the debate for these kind of questions.
I've
Look,
gotta
I would
run.
tell- I would
Questions are
tell
different
them, you know,
language.
I
I've
would
got to
tell
run,
them,
folks. We can't take any more questions. We
yeah.
got to get everybody out of here. This one coming in from Made by Jim Bob says, Neeina, do you think with enough manpower you could destroy the patriarchy?
Obviously, men and women both uphold patriarchy, so I don't really think you could do it with one only. You couldn't just destroy it with men. You would need women as well.
So both men and women oppress themselves. That's your stance.
Yeah. That was
That's how
literally what we
society
talked
works.
This is
about
the most
earlier. Did you
ridiculous thing
forget?
I've ever heard in my life.
This one coming in
Oh,
from
okay. I
If
get
you have
to
to have
figure out how
if you're going to do the
capitalism
oppressor-oppressed thing, you have to have an oppressor. You can't say, well, we equally oppress each other and ourselves.
works. Yep.
Culture
'cause you
can be
have a
oppressive.
this one from
Brain
Yeah,
Name,
of
but
a
that's
child
because
here.
people... Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Name 7861 says, should the Federal Reserve be abolished?
No.
Yes, absolutely yes. Get rid of the
We
Federal
can debate that
Reserve.
Oz later.
Damn, we need to actually have a state-run bank that answers to the people. The Federal Reserve is an open conspiracy of international bankers to hijack
Okay.
the sovereignty of our country.
Oh, he's gonna go on.
This one coming in from, I think that might actually be it. Let me just double check really quick. The last one from Harold Sullivan says, patriarchal societies today secure the rights and dignity of women. Iran, DPRK, I should know what that means, but I don't. China and Russia are examples. Western liberalism
Korea.
equals OnlyFans.
I mean, this is just appealing to a tradition where women's dignity is all wrapped up in their ability to control sex and not placate the male gaze and be, the W word. So that's...
I think they're maybe being
could say it,
sarcastic.
you're a
If
big
that's not
boy.
what dignity
Whore.
is, I don't know what it is.
You
I mean,
got
I
it.
don't want to be
Opinion
too
on,
right-wing
Western
here, but
women wearing burqas.
Based! Maybe we should just fucking do that.
Yeah.
But you
yeah,
like hot
that
women,
tracks.
though. How are you gonna find the hot
maybe I
women?
can teach this country a thing or two about modesty. It seems in order. Overcorrect a little bit because it seems it went extreme in the other direction.
Would you be attracted to a woman if she was in a burqa?
It'd be an arranged marriage. Why do I need to be attracted to her?
Yeah, he gets
Why don't
guaranteed
you
sex
just-
because of the
We're
patriarchy.
not going to have this poor adult society where.
Wait, but what if she was like ugly?
Well, I'm sure my parents will judge, right? And I could say no. Arranged marriages don't always, not
Well, arranged
forced.
marriages are for status, so like maybe
They're not
their parents
forced.
were really rich.
No. I trust my parents'
No,
judgment.
the men can say
And,
no.
you know.
That's how it works.
Oh, of course.
You have to remember that.
This
And
one, last one.
I'll choose my son.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I'm so sorry, James.
But last two, actually. Coconut Cream Pie says, race realism? No, I'm saying people have unique traits, abilities, or downfalls. Why are you bringing up race? All right.
Well, to answer that question is because there's a mention of environment in there and how environment plays into that, and that's the thing that a lot of race realists say when they talk about where people's cultures come from, the land, soil, etc. So if that's not what you meant, I apologize. That was a poor assumption on my end, and I will do better.
This one from Steel Stargazer says, I'm a bit older, but the 20-ish guys like me because they say girls in their 20s have terrible attitudes and ideology and constantly thinking they are so much better than men. Is this cougar going to show you guys up, Grace and Neeina?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
yeah, I had a woman brain moment. Can you say it again?
They say I'm a
I just
bit
didn't
older,
understand.
but the 20-ish, the guys in their 20s like me because they say girls in their 20s have terrible attitudes and ideology and constantly think that they're so much better than men.
What's the point?
I don't
didn't
think
really
most.
understand.
I don't think most women my age think we're a lot better than men. I think there's a problem that, like, the society values male traits, so we feel like we have to be masculine in order to be respected, like aggressive, sort of all that stuff, and so we become masculinized ourselves, and then I think men find us less attractive But I don't really think there's a
Eventually,
big thing where 20
you'll realize that those aren't masculine traits, and you'll realize those are just traits of people that get respect.
This one from Marcia Everett says, you say patriarchy comes from nature. So look at nature. The ape suppresses the females and the other males. Grace thinks females should like it, but it is obvious the males don't, and I say some females don't like it either.
Yeah, well, let's just say the human ape is a little different from the others. We're not literally talking about the observed behavior of chimpanzees and gorillas one for one. Also, human beings have a soul. Those are things those animals don't have. That's why we have societies. That's why we have traditions. That's why we have spirituality. Apes, by the way, do incest. We don't do that. It's not instinctually correct. We human beings have culture. They don't have culture. So we're not just talking directly about nature, but the way culture mediates nature. And the two are not opposed to each other. You're just basically saying we should have no culture if we're going to make an argument in reference to nature. Just because we call something natural doesn't mean it doesn't have a spiritual or cultural quality to it, So I would say you're
What does it mean?
Where you're coming from.
Any last thoughts on that last question?
I'm going to ask, what does that mean when you say that it's spiritual?
Generally what people refer to when they mean spiritual is things that pertain to the soul.
No, I'm asking you.
You're asking me or someone else?
You. I'm talking to you.
You're personal.
Things that relate to matters of the soul or the intellect or the mind or of culture or of art. These are all things that refer to spirit. Spirit can also refer to motion, matter in motion, the way the motion actually changes the established forms of the material world. So that's what spirit is. I know you thought it was a gotcha question, but I completely fucking nailed it and hit it out of the park. So
Well, it just sounds like you're about to make it cult, but okay.
It
didn't really make any sense.
That's the sound of surrender.
We have to tell you, folks, our guests are linked in the description. What are you waiting for? You can click on their links right now. We appreciate our guests. They're the lifeblood of the channel. Want to say thank you very much, Neeina and Anthony, Grace and Infrared. It's been a true pleasure to have you tonight. And folks, go into the description box right now and find their links. You can keep listening to them. Whoever you enjoyed most, now's your chance. You can keep listening to them by clicking on their link below. One last thanks to our guest, and thanks so much for all of your questions.
Wait.
Yeah.
James, are you wrapping up? I just want to say one thing really quick. My friend is hosting an after show on the channel Zoomer Debates. We're going to have people on and keep discussing this topic. If anybody wants to come over there, just wanted to throw that out there.
You got it.
Okay, cool. It's called Zoomer Debates. Zoomer.
Yeah, just link me on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. Thank you very much. And with that, folks, I can't do an after show tonight, but I will in the future. So I'm going to cut it. Want to say thanks everybody for being with us. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. We'll see you next time at Modern Day Debate.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.